Hello and welcome back to Blood and Ashes. This is episode 28, the first for book 4, The Shadow Rising. I am your host Mo, and I'm joined as always by my refreshed and reinvigorated friends Vili.
Hiya Ilta.
And Jody.
Swiel Melonigan.
I'm not even going to guess at either of them. What was yours, Will?
Finish.
Oh.
And I think I mucked that up already. But
Butchered it.
I tried. Hiva Ilta. Hiva.
Oh, there you go.
Should be.
I'm sure it's flawless.
Probably very flawed.
Our Finnish friends can let us know.
Please
Just
do.
lost several Finnish followers.
Our Finnish foes. And how about you, Joe?
Elvish from Lord of the Rings. It's about bloody time.
Jody, not one to settle for real world languages, making his way through the fantasy and sci-fi lexicon.
Hey, man, that language is a real language. So, people speak it. They get together in parks. There's like Tolkien societies that meet in parks and they just chat to each other in Elvish constantly. It's weird.
I am Jack's complete lack of surprise.
Totally.
Well, Jody, I'll set you a challenge for the next one. Why don't you do it in the old tongue?
Okay.
Ooh, wow, that's putting your neck on the line, eh? Our entire listenership could be up in arms.
I'll have to contact Matt, get some notes.
Okay, well, here we are, gents. A brand new book lies ahead of us. We can put the frantic events of the Stone of Tear behind us and settle in for a nice, relaxed, slow start, right? No. That is not to be. Vili, you alluded to this last time, but I can't remember much detail from this book at all. I know Rand goes to the Waste. I don't remember exactly who goes with him. And I remember sort of like the main conclusion of that journey, but virtually everything between those points is shadow and blur.
I can remember basically that Rand goes to the desert and gets golden tattoos.
And I know that somewhere Asmodean enters the picture on that trip. Is that in this book or the next one? Don't know. It's
in
just
between
like...
there, Moraine could have stepped into a gate. I don't even know when she lost out of the story. This is where it all becomes very hazy.
But this is amazing. I'm loving the idea of not knowing. Like, I'm always reluctant to speak about book 4 to our friend Jethro, who is currently reading book 4 for the first time, because he wants to ask me questions about it, but I'm reluctant to talk to him because I kind of don't want to spoil the detail of this book, which sounds insane considering the nature of this podcast.
And the fact that you don't know anything about this book. So how are you going to do that?
What I do know about it is that many... internet personalities that we all follow hold this book in very high regard, and it seems to be generally beloved. So I don't know if that's going to place unrealistic expectations on
Too
it
late.
for me.
Nah, too late.
Impossible,
It's
right?
done the job already.
Already placed.
I already refer to reading The Wheel of Time as the greatest thing I've ever done. So if this is people's favorite book in that series, then I'm bound to have a good time.
I've got 2 daughters, but this is the greatest thing I've ever done.
That's sort of just a glib line that I have been saying since I was in high school, and I now pull it out for comedic effect. It has a lot more power now since, as you mentioned, I do have children.
Yes.
Okay, but before we embark on that epic journey, let's do a quick jump back into The Dragon Reborn for a couple callbacks. Number 1, I prematurely labeled the callback section from the last episode as the last Dragon Reborn flavored callback section, which is idiotic considering that we would be on this episode when we call back to that one. So
I actually
first
made a
mistake.
note of that.
You did?
It's like, I can be Captain Padan for once.
We were talking about Matt hearing the dice tumbling in his head, and we were speculating about whether that instance was the first time that Matt had heard it. And I think it was when Matt leaves Mother Gwenna's house, right? And he's left Tom behind and he's setting off towards the Stone of Tyr. He actually hears the dice, and we wondered if maybe Matt heard it specifically when he was about to gamble against Komar in the Golden Cup. But in that specific scene, I went back and I read that again, and in that section, Matt has that very hectic. What should I call it? Like an experience, like
Visceral shaking of the
yes, he
dice in his
senses
body.
his luck working against the physics of these loaded dice to roll, 5 of a kind when it really should have been a full house. And there's no mention of the dice like rolling in his head. So I think, Joe, you were the one that said that might be the first time we heard it as he leaves Mother G's house. And so far, unless the listeners can correct me, that seems to be the case.
Sweet.
When I read that section again, now I'm opening us up for more callbacks and more theories and more speculation.
More Dragon Reborn flavored ones.
The Dragon Reborn flavor never truly subsides. Matt, when he has that reaction, when he's feeling, his luck working almost, tangibly, there's a line in there that says he felt like he wanted to look at the door. What the hell could that mean? Remember, it was just before he darted in there, or I say darted, it wasn't him that darted, it was Rand that darted around a corner. That's when he sees Rand. And it's when he's inside there and he rolls the dice and he can feel everything shifting around him. He has this urge to look at the door.
Don't know.
Weird reference, right? Like, that doesn't fit that scene, or not that I can tell. It doesn't really add anything to that scene. So I wonder if, maybe he is subconsciously attributing this stuff to being Taverin or the effect of a Taverin, maybe looking at the door to see if Rand is nearby, affecting things happening around him. I don't know. This is all wild speculation, but it was a weird thing that stood out to me. And it's not something we brought up when we actually covered the chapter at all. But when I went back and read it again, I was like, well, why did he feel the urge to look at the door? If anyone knows, please, for the love of God, put us out of our misery. Then, in the Great Hunt, when Ingtar's party, including Matt and Perrin, encounter Urien, the Aielman, who says to them, or they encounter Urien, the first Aielman that they meet, and he says to them, I have no pipers to play the tune, but if you wish to dance, smiling at them. After that statement, Ingtar specifically declines to fight. He says, I didn't come here for a fight. We're here for another goal. And that is where Matt had heard the reference to dancing, meaning fighting. Joe, you asked if Belal's sword was conjured with the true power. And I can't find anything definitive, but the effects of using it don't seem to be present. So most notably, when people are using the true power in the books, they seem to be surrounded by some kind of dark aura, like we've seen Shamal have many, many times before. And it also seems to be used very sparingly by everyone except Ishamal. I think later in the books, Grandal specifically also has access to it. Demandred uses it to look through the eyes of a bird and muses to himself that this would not be possible with the one power. There's a couple things you can do with it. Like we said, levitation and that sort of stuff you can do with the true power. But none of the sort of telltale signs that accompany it are around when Belal is channeling. So I think I'm even more confident now to say that I think that was just a black sword conjured with the one power.
Here's another question. Are the male channelers of the Forsaken immune to the taint, or are they protected from it?
You're reading my mind. This is my next point in callbacks, because specifically we spoke about it then, because your next comment in that conversation was, oh, so he is exposed to the taint.
Yeah.
And there seems to be quite a lot of discussion about it, obviously, online. It doesn't seem to be addressed outright, but there are sort of mentions of things like oaths that they had taken, that shield them from the worst effects of it or shielding them from it at all. The fact that a lot of these male Forsaken have been channeling a lot, both in the Age of Legends. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter about the Age of Legends since the taint only happened at the ceiling of the bore, so it would have been sealed the whole time and then came out. But general consensus seems to be that they are somewhat protected by it, yes.
All right. There you go. It's now definitive. Canon, people.
Then I did some more poking around to see if there's any kind of future reference to Bane and Chiad being a couple. And there isn't. They are just, like we said, they are obviously first sisters. And we know that it's Chiad that later, Gaul is interested in Chiad. And, well, he's in love with her. And she's in love with him as well. And Gaul experiences a bunch of frustration about the fact that Chiad doesn't want to abandon the spears for him. And Gaul also doesn't seem to necessarily have a lot of time for Bane, which is problematic because with them being first sisters, it's both of them or nothing. So I went back again and I read that section again where Bane and Chiad are explaining to Egwene and Elaine what it means to be first sisters, just to sort of get clear or more clarity in my own mind about exactly what their relationship is based on. So Bane is of the Sharad Aiel and Chiad is of the Goshin Aiel, and they have a blood feud. But because they are both Maidens of the Spear, and we'll probably learn a lot about this in this book specifically, the loyalties of the warrior societies trump those of the clans. So the warrior societies, so Maidens, Stone Dogs, Red Shields, whatever they may be, they stick together and they put their differences aside. But Bane and Chiad felt that the vows, I think they actually refer to them as their wedding vows. Wedded to the spear, right? So the vows that they've made to the Maidens of the Spear were not enough. And they went to the wise ones and spoke the words to become first sisters, to further solidify their bond, despite the fact that they are of the same warrior society. I don't know if it's because their clans have a blood feud and like the animosity is so harsh that they just wanted an extra layer of, not proof, but just something else to show people that they are absolutely not entertaining the blood feud, that they are really, really close, or if it is just them, wanting to prove to each other that they have each other's backs, and not just in the same way that they have the backs of all the other maidens, but despite their blood feud, they have each other's backs. I think it's the latter. First sisters, who are maidens, do not let a man come to one of them without the other. And when Bane says this, Chiad smiles. So I get the sense that Bane and Chiad have had male lovers before and have shared them. So they might not be, what we term a couple, but they are wedded in almost every sense of the word to each other as well, right? Like, I mean, there's nothing they don't share. They've pledged their lives to each other. They clearly care for each other, and they share the bed with whatever man presents himself to them. So I'm not going to, try and impose a modern day definition of what a relationship is on specifically Bane and Chiads, or even later when it sort of becomes the polyamorous triangle that is Bane and Chiad and Gaul. But in my own mind, I have decided that they obviously do care for each other, and I would go so far as to say that they do love each other. And Matt trying to worm his way in there between them, so like, if Matt had to sort of like try and bed both of them at the same time, which if he had known, he probably would have gone for. But the fact that he's sort of trying to get between them is what's funny to the other Aiel, because they would know how close Bane and Chiad really are. So because Matt's sort of like he's bummed out that he can't get one of them alone so that he can woo her, and the two of them, Bane and Chiad, think it's funny, and then the rest of the Aiel also think it's funny, and Matt's just scratching his head going, why do they think it's funny that I'm trying to get into some kind of alone time with one of these ladies? Then moving on from the Aiel, which book, see if you guys can guess, Which book has no Perrin? Perrin does not appear in the book, or at least he doesn't have a point of view chapter in in one of the books. See if you can remember which book it is.
Lucky number 11.
I'm going to
11?
say 11 was my guess.
It's book 5.
What?
Oh.
I know, right?
The next one?
That's the very next book. Perrin has no chapters.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right.
Get ready for disappointment.
Beefy boy is now a hashtag missing boy.
Yeah. It's crazy. There's online you can find breakdowns of like the percentages that each person gets in each book, and so I went through those and I found the very next book. Oh, no Perrin. And then lastly, this one is sort of open-ended, so it's nothing conclusive, but I did go poking around to try and find out whether Rand used the true power to travel after Ishamael. When Ishamael leaves the Stone of Tear and he goes, or the Heart of the Stone, into Tel Aranriad, and Rand just follows him by copying what he did. Because we know at the time Ishamael was using the true power the whole time. They didn't describe the traveling in the same way that they do later in the story. And Rand was holding Kalandor, which we know is a Sa'angril for the true power as well. Now, the rules, quote unquote, around the use of the true power is that obviously the Dark One needs to grant you access to it, and you somehow need to have been not in contact with the Dark One, but somewhere that you are actually, within striking distance. If you think of like the ceiling of the boar, they were right there, and that's when he lashed out and he tainted the source. Apparently, the Forsaken also have to go to Shaiol Ghul originally to be granted the power. And there's a lot of talk online about how Rand, because Rand at one point in the story definitively does channel the true power, and I don't know if Vili ever got that far, but Rand does. So people were sort of using that, not referencing the book 3 ending that I was saying, did he use the true power? But like the later instance of it, asking how is that possible if he hasn't been granted permission by the Dark One, or he hasn't been touched by the true power yet himself. And there's a couple theories going around, one of them obviously being that Lews Therin would have encountered the true power at the boar, and that Rand is basically him. There's the fact that Lanfear may have very well healed him with the true power, the wound in his side at the end of the Great Hunt, which is why no one with the one power can sort of make any sense of what's going on with the healing. And a couple sort of other theories floating around out there. But what all of those theories give me, and my theory, is the fact that Rand has been in contact with the true power. So if that is the reason that he can use it later in the story, it could be the reason that he might have been able to replicate what Ishamael had done here. So Rand definitely does channel it later. So there's nothing that happens between here and then that would sort of unlock that ability for him, except for the crossing of the streams with Moradin. And those two then becoming sort of inextricably linked as well, which is also never explained properly. There's never any rules or any kind of guidance given to what the effect of this is going to be now. It's all very fuzzy. But all of that is to say that it does not, in my mind, discount my theory. There's still a little ember of an idea burning away inside there that maybe he did copy exactly what Ishamael did.
Right on.
Yeah. And that is all for callbacks this time.
Woohoo!
So, previously on Blood and Ashes, everyone went to the Heart of the Stone and all hell broke loose.
Right.
Well, just to refresh people's memories, Moraine had bale-fired Belal, and Rand finally killed Ishamael by driving Kalandor through his chest.
That'll do it.
As you do with a powerful Sa'angril, use it to stab someone. Ruach reveals to Moraine and company that the Aiel are in fact, or that the clan chiefs know that the Aiel are known as the people of the dragon, and he shows them his dragon tattoo on his arm. And that is pretty much where we left things in the Stone of Tyr, with a short little debrief session and the revelation that the Aiel are in fact the people of the dragon, which I guess is very pertinent to specifically this book.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to chapter 1 of The Shadow Rising. It's called Seeds of the Shadow. Jody, take it away.
Thank you, sir. Well, the wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories
Does
that
it?
become legend. It does indeed. And anyway, all these legends phase to myth, etc., and then there's winds. There's usually winds involved.
It's very windy.
It's very windy there in this part of the country. All right. This particular wind blows straight to Tarvalon and to Min, who has just arrived, seeking an audience with the ambulance seat. Moraine sent her, if you recall, previously.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So she's waiting in the courtyard outside the White Tower with all the other petitioners and the lords and the ladies and the commoners, everybody rubbing shoulders alike. Everybody's equal here. All right. And she's got the hood of her cloak over her head because she's in disguise. Her hair is a little bit longer. She's wearing a dress. Gasp, shock. And she's going under the name of Elmandrada. Much to her disdain. But there she is.
Well, that's her real name, isn't it?
Yes, but she
Yes.
would not. She does not like it, obviously. So her plan is simple. It's almost Matt-esque in its simplicity. It is get into the tower, speak to the Amerlin, deliver a message, and then leave. Ha ha! What a foolish girl. That's not going to happen. So anyway, they get inside, walk up the steps. They get inside the little antechamber downstairs where they're waiting to give their petitions. And there's 4 accepted walking around there, circulating around the petitioners, taking their orders, fries and a Coke. And Min is approached by our good old friend, Pheolin, who hasn't changed a bit. She's still a horrible cow. Min won't tell her what she wants, only that she demands an audience with the Amerlin's seat, which apparently is the right of any woman who enters the tower. They can demand an audience and, by right, get it. Unless, of course, the Amerlin says no, I suppose. I don't know. You have the right to demand it, just not the right
to have
get
it.
a yes, is the answer. Pheolin's like, no, you can't do that. The Amerlin's too busy. And she's like, I want my right. I want to speak to her. I want to speak to her now. Tell her that Elmandrada is here. So off she goes, Pheolin, that is. And while she's away, Min starts looking around the room and she notices all the other Aes Sedai that are walking around there. And as always, she sees images around them, especially Aes Sedai all the time. But in this case, she sees violence and death. And there's 3 Aes Sedai in the room with her, and all 3 of them show signs of death and that they are going to die all within the same day. So she's hectically shocked about this. And my first thought was the attack on the tower by the Shawnchan, but that only happens way later. So it's obviously the split of the tower, which is very, very close.
Well, if they all die on the same day, it can be a day that's way later.
It could be because she can't pinpoint exactly when this is going to happen.
I'm just throwing the cat among the pigeons because I was thinking about this. I couldn't tell whether it was the split or the attack.
Or both.
Or both, exactly. She thinks it's one thing, but time will tell.
Yes, it will. So Phelan goes to deliver Min's request. While she's gone, Sheriam appears, and she will recognize Min, regardless of whatever half-assed disguise she's in. So she obscures her face even more, but she notices as well that her face is all battered and bruised. So Sheriam is not going to die, but she's going to suffer some violence. Rather quickly, Moritz, you breathed in there. Do you want to say something?
I was going to say, Sheriam, remember, gets beaten by Halima on a regular basis in Saladar.
I don't remember that. Okay.
But she does.
I'll take your word for it. All right. Well, there you go. That's why. But then later on, there's another thing that's Shawnchan related, which we'll get to. So quickly enough, a novice appears. So her petition has been granted, and rather quickly. So I'm very surprised. And it's Sarah, or Sahara, however you want to pronounce that. A novice. She returns to call Min to the Amerlin study, and along the way, going up all the spiral staircases and whatnot, Min sees more Aes Sedai and more warders, and it's all showing images of violence and death. So she's getting more and more freaked out as she gets closer to the Amerlin. And as they reach the Amerlin study, the door opens, and Gawain exits. And he recognizes her immediately. It's not a good disguise. I thought it would be good. Like, I thought, oh, she's got long hair, she's got a dress. No one will realize. No, not working. So much for her disguise. He wants to know where his sister is, and Egwene. He's like, where? Oh, and the other one too, Nynaeve. He puts her in as an afterthought,
He does.
just to be polite. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
No.
No. And Min is shocked. She's like, holy shit, no, they got sent back ages ago, months ago. And he's like, no, they came back. That first time they came, now they're gone again. So a lot has happened. And I'm thinking, man, the communication for the tower is just so terrible. Those pigeons are useless, utterly. I don't even know why they even use them. So yeah, but apparently the story is that that the girls have been sent to work on a farm for penance or something, and he's not buying that story either. So he sees right through her disguise. He sees through the Amelin story about them on a farm. He's no man's fool. Min gets a vision of him as well while she's busy talking to him. Just above his head, she sees a banner floating. Well, first she sees blood dried and streaking on his face, and then a banner appears above him as well, which is his boar symbol, but instead of on the field of red for Andor, it's on the field of green. So this does become his banner then for the younglings, does it? And they got the green because they're all Warders of the Green Aja or something? Because he does become, he wants to become, he becomes Egwene's warder, and she's green. Well, wants to be green.
I don't know if it's got to do with the Aja specifically, but I do think that he has his own banner for the younglings. I don't know definitively. Call back.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait until book 14. See what happens then. All right, so he is very upset, and he just wants to protect the girls. That typical trope that we get throughout this. All the men just want to protect the women, and the women are just protecting themselves absolutely fine without any men being around.
Yep.
Except for the Stone of Tyr. Matt was necessary there, but just briefly. They already had a plan that they were working on. Yeah, as he leaves as well, both Sarah and Min give out a little sigh as Gawain leaves. They're like, ah. And little Sarah she's obsessed with him. She thinks he is just the most handsome thing, except for his brother, of course.
Yeah,
brother's still. Yeah. So anyway, she realizes then, like, oh crap, these guys have been having a chat. I've been summoned by the Amarin, but the novice Sarah, she's been sidetracked completely by old handsome Gawain. She's supposed to be bringing Min to see the Amerlin, so she grabs Min by the arm and pushes her through the door, and we get into the antechamber, of course, where Leanne is waiting, and then immediately recognizes Min as well. So Min has a viewing of Leanne as well, and this is what she sees is Leanne looking through a transparent mask of her own face, but the mask is screaming.
You.
This is, banners are easy, blood and death, there's going to be violence. What? I don't remember this. What could this be? Stilling? Yes. So what? She's trapped, or she's
stilled with Swan.
Yes, I remember that. But the mask screaming, like, what can she? Can a stilled woman still sense the true or the one power?
So. They can
just
feel
cut
it's
off
there,
completely.
But they can't get it.
That's what I'm asking. Like, maybe that's what that transparent mask means, but I don't think so. I think that the biggest part is that loss of not being able to feel it. And that's what makes many of them go crazy. Anyway, we'll have to look into that too at some point.
Pin.
Put a pin in it. Upon entering Swan's study, Min curtsies, and halfway into it, she has a vision again of Swan, naked and lying on the floor. And she thinks to herself that there's something odd with that image, besides the fact that it's the Amelin naked on the floor, but something odd. But she can't put her finger on it, and the vision disappears before she can figure out what that odd thing is. And that's another mystery that you need a pin in it, unless two of you have an answer to that.
I just read it as her seeing that, like, a screaming face. Seeing Leanne scream is, congruent with her being stilled. I think that when Swan and Leanne are still, they are taken into like a dungeon or something, and when they were going to do that to Egwene in her accepted test,
Mm.
or when they were going to turn her, she was also lying on a thing naked. So I don't know if
Yeah.
they stripped them naked before stilling them or something along those lines, but
Yeah, it could
I
be
just read
something
it as
like
like,
that, shaming them.
Swan, you're gonna have a tough time.
There's
in
not just
the
you
next
naked.
couple-
You're naked for a very more serious reason than just your nakedness or something. I don't know.
Mm,
But it's a very
don't know.
specific line. I don't think
Mm.
Robert Jordan would have written that line if it didn't have significance.
No.
But anyway, there's that. Speculation abounds. Min tells Swan about her vision because she notices her face and goes, "All right, what did you see about me now? I've heard about your
Yeah.
visions. What's going on? Tell me." And then Swan kind of dismisses it like, "Oh, well, maybe I'll find a lover or something." She kind of just brushes it off. But then Min lays out the whole story about everything she's seen so far, walking up and what she's seen on the waters, and she tells the Amryn about that. And it seems that all of this will take place. What she does say is that it will all be within the span of a day or two. So that kind of gave me the impression that it's got to be one of these attacks. Maybe that's why she thinks it's one. She doesn't know when, but she knows all of them are going to be like they're killed or have violence done to them within 24 to 48 hours of each other. So, and I know the split of the tower, obviously, and the Shawnchan attack are far, far apart.
Yeah,
So it has to be
I'm
one
leaning
or the
towards
other.
the split.
That was
I'm going
my thought as well.
I'm going to disagree with you, basically, on this
Okay.
next line, because she also mentions that she saw one of the Aes Sedai with an image of a collar around her neck, a silver collar around her neck with a chain.
Well,
So,
there we go.
yeah, you should have just hold your opinions until my next sentence. Yeah.
Does Min say that every single vision that she saw that day, that all of them are going to happen within a day or two of each other, or that some of them are going to happen within a day or two?
Yeah, I thought
or
she was
of each
referencing
other?
only to the viewings that she had of the Aes Sedai in the waters.
Of the three Aes
Of the
Sedai.
violence, yeah. Because, I mean, she's
that-
looking at Swan for something that happens completely in a different time anyway, and Leanne, for that matter, because the split of the tower is quite far off from
Yes.
the stilling event. So, it's being two, I think she's referring to the violent battle in the tower when the younglings stand up and...
Well, now you're talking about the split again.
Mm.
The younglings come to be during the split, but the mention of a collar specifically muddies those
Yeah, but
waters
that has
completely.
got reference only to Swan. It's not, for me, the way that I read it is that her comment was directly about that viewing of those Aes Sedai and warders, that something's going to happen that is going to be violent, but not her viewing that she had of Swan and Leanne, because that wouldn't even fall in any of those time frames.
But where does she see a viewing about the collar? Because it's not on Leanne or Swan.
Where did she see it? I actually can't remember. I thought she saw it with Swan.
Jody's busy reading it now. He's going to tell us in a second.
But mother, I've been seeing things ever since I walked into the tower. Something bad is going to happen, something terrible. Mother, perhaps I didn't make it myself clear. Aes Sedai and warders are going to die. It has to mean a battle, and unless you send a lot of Aes Sedai and warders off somewhere, and servants too, I saw servants dead and injured. Unless you do that, the battle will be here, in Tarvalon. Ah. When? How long will this thing occurs? And then Min shook her head. I don't know. Most of it will happen in the space of a day, maybe two. Most of it. All right. So maybe she just saw way into the future with that collar, and way
Where
into
did
the
she
future
see the collar? With whom?
on an Aes Sedai when she was walking up the stairs
Yeah.
to the Amulet study. Okay, so it's most of it, not all of it.
So she could be referencing both events and sort of
yes.
conflating them.
Yeah, look, those visions are not very clear most of the time, but anyway.
No.
All right. Well, there you go. That's cleared up. No need for a callback. Min also speculates that it might be the White Cloaks, because they still have a presence around Tarvalon. But Swan dismisses that. And basically, her thing is that they don't have the cojones for that kind of attack. No way.
They do not.
Min also mentions that she saw... Oh, that's the one, yeah, that she saw an Adam. And Swan tells her about the Black Aja, like straight out. No, she doesn't think it's any of these things, or the Sean Chan, or the White Cloak. She thinks it's a Black Aja. And Min is like, the what? The what, the who now? And she's like, no, they are definitely the biggest immediate threat to the tower. And she, like, the thought of a split in the tower or a mutiny from her fellow sisters doesn't even occur to her. Obviously not.
No.
And it's a sad state. Like, it's White Cloaks, it's the Sean Chan, it's the Black Aja, but it's not your sisters themselves. Even though they're being manipulated to a degree by the Black Aja and whatnot, but still.
And as we see in the next couple paragraphs before the end of this chapter, the plot to usurp her has already begun.
Indeed. So this is what I was talking about earlier, this horrible communication, because Swan doesn't have any news about what happened. She hasn't heard anything for months. She doesn't know. The last she knows is that Rand is in Felmay. That's the last news she has.
And they spent an entire winter in the mountains.
Exactly. Rand already has Kalandor. Like, he's already proclaimed himself the dragon, and that news has not even reached her yet.
Is that confirmed that Min storyline plays off exactly at the same time as we jump to? Because when you go to the next chapter, there's also sort of an introductory jump, sort of.
This could be a little bit before.
Because there's no prologue here. You go straight to chapter 1, where normally you'd have a prologue that explains something that happened and then the story sets off. And in this instance, you go straight into this chapter. There's no timestamp on it, really. All you know, it is Min that arrived at Tarvalon after she got sent by Moraine, and also a very long time ago already. Now, she would not have necessarily traveled that long, but it took them to get all the way and catch up with Rand in Tyr and do everything that they've done for this to play off in the same time frame.
Why not?
I think there is actually
it's
a time
Have you
frame.
looked at the map? Because Min travels by herself from the mountains to Tarvalon.
Yeah, I know it's a long way.
While Rand is making a beeline for Tyr and the others are chasing after him. So I think the time span is comparable, if not definitively longer or shorter. We have no knowledge of what route Min travels or what modes of transport she uses.
Yeah, she just says, but I've not heard anything of Rand al'Thor for months. Not a specific set.
Okay.
But I mean, months had transpired before Min left, because Rand was at Falmay, and then they spent months in the mountains, and that's when Nynaeve and Egwene and Elaine had left,
when
and
they
they
left
made their
the
way with
mountains,
Farron to the tower. They were in the mountains the whole time while those girls were traveling. And then Lan and Moraine and Perrin and Loyal chase after Rand, and Min goes off to Tarvalon for another long period of time to travel all the way to Tarvalon by herself.
And it is a fair distance from those mountains to Tarvalon. That's more than half the breadth of the continent. So it could have,
So you don't know definitively.
No, it could be slightly before, or like could be happening at the same time. For example, like he's just he's just grabbed Kalandor right now, while Min is talking to the Amlin right now. So, but it's pretty close. All right, so not impossible with the stupid pigeon system that they have that she hasn't heard anything.
God.
Anyway, yeah, wow. this chapter's long enough without these weird long tangents. Anyway, let's get back to it. So Min tells her that the last she heard, he was heading to Tyr, because that's when they left the mountains together. And immediately Swan goes, Kalandor then. And she is pissed because, of course, Moraine tells her nothing. She just sits here in the tower, just hoping for the best, while Moraine's out there in the world. And then Min confronts her about controlling Rand, and Amren's basically like, duh, you think we're just going to let him run around, cut him loose, and this madman running around, the Dragon Reborn? Like, no ways. So Swan and then interprets Min's concern for Rand and her anger at the Aes Sedai for controlling him as love, which she correctly does. And we get the whole thing that, yes, she saw that vision the first time she laid eyes on Rand. She had a viewing of 3 women. One of them was herself. And she knew that moment she would love him. But Rand has never looked at her in any other way except as a sister. And then Swan asks her who the other 2 were, and she lies and says, I couldn't see that their faces were blurred. So that's kind of ballsy, lying to the ambulance seat like that. She
Mm-hmm.
she knows one's Elaine, but she doesn't know who Avienda is. She hasn't met her yet. But she did see the faces quite clearly. All right, so with her message delivered, Min leaves. End of chapter. No, of course not. Min wants to head to Tyr. She's like, all right, I've delivered my message. I want to go to Tyr. But Swan, of course, has other ideas. It's too dangerous for her to be hanging around the Dragon Reborn, is the case that she's making. What she should do instead is stay in the tower and help her hunt the Black Aja, which is much safer. Do that. All right. And it is too dangerous to hang around the Dragon Reborn, as we'll see in Vili's chapter. There's Lords, there's Forsaken, there's Aes Sedai. I mean, no, Min's going to stay here, and she's going to increase her disguise, because it's obviously not working, by putting on some makeup. That's apparently going to do the trick. That's the only little thing that was missing from this almost perfect disguise. Putting some paint on her face. All right, well, off she goes then. So Min realizes this is what Swan has been planning since she entered the room. So, like, as soon as she found out that Min was on her way, she was like, I've got a new ally. Because now she's got no one. She's got no Moraine. She's got no Nynaeve, Egwene, Elaine. She can't trust anyone else in the tower. So
with a super unique and useful skill that nobody knows about.
Like, look at that person. Do they have the devil standing behind them? Yes, that's a dark friend. Okay. Easily identifiable. So, yeah, the plan is, like I said, to put on some more makeup and really lean into this Elmond Drader character and the story, and making a backstory for her. Like, she's got too many men after her. She's all these suitors, and she has to run away from them and be protected by the tower. And Min is hating it. Like, she's more upset about this than she is about being, roped in to hunt the Black Aja. Like this.
Yes.
Her backstory is more of a problem than anything else.
My dress and makeup? Are you insane? No. But all she can say is, yes, mother. And that's the end of that. I mean, what are you going to say? Well, that's the end of that part, because this chapter is expansive, to say the least. So meanwhile, outside the study, Elida is there. And she also recognized Min instantaneously, along with everybody else. And she's trying to figure out what the hell Swan is up to. And this is her internal monologue. I mean, she is spot on. Like, everything that they have been trying to hide and that no one has guessed, Elida has figured out already. She doesn't buy the story that Egwene and Elaine and Nynaeve are off doing penance. She doesn't think that's true either. And she's thinking about, in this stretch, specifically about her foretelling talent. And two of the most significant foretellings she's had. One was that the royal line of Andor will be the key to defeating the Dark One in Tarmangaido, which is why she attached herself to the throne in the first place all those decades ago. And now she's back in the tower.
Not something I ever remembered, which is cool. Like, okay, cool. She's there with a purpose. It's not by mistake that, Morghese had an Aes Sedai there the whole time.
Exactly. And then, I mean, and it's all ruined now because she's been kicked out. So she's back in the tower. Mm-hmm. She's pissed off about that. All that decades of work. And the other was when she met Rand in Andor, and she immediately saw that he was a Ta'veren and that he was going to bring chaos, division, and strife to Andor and the world in a whole. All right. And then she, of course, connects him directly with the three girls. And she knows about Mat and Perrin. And she's heard rumors that they are Ta'veren. Like, she's got all the info. So if you think that Varen had some, that you thought Varen was smart, Elida is... I'm getting a different... I'm going to take a different approach to this character this time around.
Yes.
I was actually watching a video on YouTube yesterday about screenwriting. Aaron Sorkin was answering questions. And he said, one of the questions was like...
Can I interject there and just call you a dark friend real quick?
Sure, take it. She's not Black Aja. So no. I can, So one of the questions was, how do you write a villain? And he said, as a writer, you never write villains. You always just write characters. It's up to the audience to decide if they're villains. So I'm going to look at her from like a writer's perspective. All right.
Okay.
You just make her interesting and make her motivations believable. And like, because she's obviously doing everything she can because she believes it's for the good of the tower. She's not doing it to be bad. All right. So I'm going to look at it from a completely different perspective this time around.
Can't wait for that new perspective to be shattered by the reality that she is a reprehensible cow.
as I do recall, she does some reprehensible things, but does redeem herself later on. And I don't remember any of that except any of the details except that happens. But I'll look out for
I remember no redemption. Fuck
it. So maybe I just dreamt it. She also remembers Swan and Moraine's friendship from when they were novices, which she doubts anyone else in the tower remembers. And she remembers the day that they were raised, that they just turned their backs on each other and never spoke again. And that too, she's not buying. So she's like, could it be that Swan and Moraine have been hatching a plot back to when they were novices? Like she had her actual thought, and she's spot on. Like totally, they have. Just then she thinks like, this is just so dangerous for the tower. Like she would be involved in this plot. She wouldn't inform the hall. Like this is dangerous for the tower. The only way it could be worse is if one of these guys could channel. Yes. One of these guys named Rand can channel, but she's like, no. That Swan, not even Swan and Moraine would
go that far.
No, they wouldn't. Oh no. So you can see that like when she finds out that this has been happening and that they have gone this far, it's a major shock to her that she has to take action. She can't join them.
In that sort of like letter of the law interpretation of it, she's not wrong.
No.
Swan kept all of this from the rest of the tower, and Moraine has been off doing her bidding for 20 years.
Yep. And it's the Dragon fucking Reborn. It's not a little side mission, It's the fate of the world.
What Elida does not know is that Moraine and Swan were there when Guitarra Moroso had that foretelling, and the reason why it's the two of them doing this thing without telling anyone. Were they instructed by the Amelin at the time that they need to do it? Yeah. So they were given, and so Swan and Moraine also acting, carrying out the orders of the previous Amelin. So everyone, like you said, Joe, is just doing what they're doing what they think is right, and those don't always agree, and it turns into a pretty big problem.
Yeah, it does indeed. And Elida, being a red and a reprehensible human, just makes her, you're clouded by that, and you don't see her thinking process. But this little part, you do get to see inside her brain and what makes her tick.
For sure.
Yeah. So she's busy thinking all of this through, and she mutters some of the stuff out loud, which is a stupid thing to do in the tower at this point. And Elviarin is behind her, who is a white and also a black. Spoilers. She asks her, like, and it turns out not only black. I actually had to Google a bit about her to see what she is. She is she's the leader of the Supreme Council of the Black Archer.
Yes.
Elviarin.
She's first among the Black Archer.
Yeah, so she is the head of it all. And she overhears Elida mumbling to herself. And Elida's like, walk with me. I'm going to tell you a little bit of stuff. And I'm like, oh, God, tell anybody except her. Not her.
I wonder why she told Elviarin, because the two of them also don't seem to be friends of any description.
But they could be both in positions of power. They have influence within the tower. And Elida is going to need support to take down Swan. She's going to take down the Amelin. She's decided here. And she wants to talk it out with someone.
So she tells the first Aes Sedai she sees from another Archer.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I can't do that. Maybe
Elviarin, doesn't she have like a little snipe at her as well? Like when she's talking, like she seems like borderline.
She says to her, like,
rude.
Talking to yourself. Don't you have any friends? Or like, and then Elida's like, come, let's have a walk and a talk. I'm going to give you all the information I've just been thinking about. There's a plot.
Bad move.
Yeah, bad move. But it's too late. She's she's spilled the beans. So anyway, she walks and talks and tells her, I don't know how much she tells her because they kind of just walk away and we leave it there.
But don't they say that, like, at first Elviarin is sort of like, what? And then she's like, okay. Like there's a sort of like a sense that Elviarin gets on board with what Elida's saying. I don't know, maybe I dreamed that up.
No, she does.
I think
but...
you both got it wrong. And there's just the tower in play there that's become a hornet's nest for the Black Archer. They've got all kinds of magic going on there, and it starts turning you as a person. And Elida hasn't been there for a long time, and now she's been kicked away from the Queen. She had to pull in there, and now she's starting to get one over there and start planting that. She's like, oh yeah, this is a good opportunity to snake her, bring her over to the dark side.
Well, this is a good point you make there, Villy, is that's why she talks to LVR, and she's been gone for 20 years. What friends does she have in the tower?
Yeah,
Who
none.
can she trust? So maybe she's trying to recruit new friends, and LVR, and probably being one of the sitters. I'm sure she is a sitter.
I
She
don't
must
know
be.
about that.
Anyway, I'm just
They
pulling out
don't
of thin
mention
air.
it. I mean, she might be, but they don't mention it. And also, I find it hard to believe that she would specifically tell someone from another Arja. I would have thought that she would have sought support from within
From
her
her
own
own.
Arja first.
That
I'm
would have
not.
been
I'm not
the.
going to like. I mean, there's plot reasons why Elviaran needs to be her keeper down the line, and she's controlling Elida later down the track.
I don't know. Maybe Alviarin has a reputation that we are not aware of at this stage in the books, and Elida is.
Well, Elida here mentions again that she's a white and therefore is just cold, hard logic. So maybe Elida thought if she put all the facts in front of a member of the white Arja, they would draw the same conclusion.
Yeah. All right. She's just running her plans by. See, okay. It's all just random.
It's a weird
speculation.
move. Like the
Yeah.
first person that you come across in the hallway. Come, let's spill
Yeah,
the
you have the
beans.
thought, you see someone, and you tell them that thought, which is about,
Like it wasn't Sarah or Pheolin.
Yeah.
Random servant. Hey, servant, walk with me.
Let's go have coffee.
Come have a coffee with me. I got some news to break down. Yeah. So anyway, they're off down to their little walkie-talkie session. And meanwhile, on the northern bank of the Taryn River, near Taryn Ferry, we meet up with old Dain. Dain Bornhald is there. He sent he's there with half a legion. So something that worries him as well. Half a legion of white cloaks on Andorian soil without permission or knowledge. So he doesn't know what the hell's going on. But anyway, he sent a delegation into the town of Taryn Ferry, led by old Jarrett Byar, to go and get information about Dark Friends, apparently. That's all the information he's been given. He was commissioned by Eamon Valda, who gave Dain his command, and then Dain had chosen Child Byar, of course, as his second due to his loyalty to his father previously, which Byar then just immediately transferred onto Dain.
Yes.
So, sweet. You got to keep it in the family. Ordieth is with them. Or Ordeeth? How was it pronounced again, Moritz?
Ordeeth.
I pronounce it Ordeeth.
Ordeeth.
I think that's what the book says.
Fain. We just call him Fain. We just call him what it really is. He is there too. And this is rankling old Dain to no end, because this dude is clearly wrong on every level. He is a madman. His Lugard accent comes and goes as his different personalities take over. He's clearly, I mean, if Perrin were there, he'd just smell utter craziness. So, I mean, even Dain can smell it. They've captured some tinkers. And when I say some, there must be a huge amount of tinkers, because they say they have like 100 wagons.
That's, a lot.
Say they have 5 people per wagon, like 5 families, or even 4 on average. We're talking 400, 500 tinkers. So anyway, they've been questioning them. They killed all of their dogs, all of the mastiffs, Villy. They killed them all.
Yeah, those are real mastiffs, Jody.
Yes, I know. They are lying in a pile already with dead flies buzzing around them, with flies buzzing around the dead bodies. Yeah, it's bubbles of evil. Who knows? And and 3 of them are missing. Immediately, Dain goes, "God damn it, Fain has taken them. He's totally got taken them." Because when they arrived and saw all of these tinkers, Mordieth himself just immediately looked at them and went, "Kill them all." And Dain was actually taken aback by the callousness and ease and sincerity he had when he said those words. Like, they're of no use to us. Just murder them all. Like 500 people. Pacifists, on top of everything. Not enemy combatants. Just murder them all. So he's immediately like, all right, if 3 of them are missing, I know who's got them and where he's taken them, or at least. But within questioning Ordieth about this, they don't really get any confirmation, but we know it's him. He just denies it, obviously. And he ate them, probably. He's got some secret horde of Trollocs in the bushes.
He fed his Trollocs that's hiding somewhere.
Yes, exactly. His pet Trollocs. He's also got a contingent, Ordieth that is, of 50 white cloaks that are also the worst of the worst. as his kind of like personal guard, his own little sub section of the army that he's taken for himself. And this is another thing that Dain is not happy with, among a huge list of things, because Padan Fain himself gave him a letter saying that that Dain must give Ordeith all the leeway he wants and that he's coming with. It's not very clear, though, whether he's under his command or if he should be taking orders from Fain. It's all very, very cloudy and he's clearly unhinged.
Loosey-goosey.
It's all loosey-goosey. That is
mystery.
Indeed. So Dain doesn't even know why he's in this part of the woods. He's been told that it's to root out dark friends and spread the light. The usual bullshit story for sending them anywhere else. And I'm surprised because doesn't he know that Perrin is from the Two Rivers?
Mm-hmm.
And he's in the Two Rivers.
Does Dain know anything about Perrin? I mean, Child Bayar probably told him.
Child Bayar does.
Yes.
But that wouldn't explain why Padan Fain has sent him.
No,
to the
but they
Two
can have
Rivers.
their own little side agenda there.
Yeah, but Dain is surprised at being in the Two Rivers at all.
Exactly.
Why did Padan Fain send me with this many men?
Well, Pedronal is controlled by Ordeith. That's why he's got along as well.
Yeah, but Ordeith is there because he wants
He's already sowed
he
his black little tingles.
He wants
into
Amon's
his head.
Field to draw Rand out. That's why he's
Yep.
there.
Remember Dain Bornhald
Mm.
came from Tarvalon and
Yes.
Aemon Volder with
Yes.
all those men.
Uh-huh.
They met Ordeith and his men along the way to
Yep.
go to... He got orders before Ordeith was there. Aemon Volder said to Dain, take these men and go to the Two Rivers
Mhm.
and meet up with Ordeith, or like Ordeith met up with him, showed him the orders from Padan Fain.
Yes.
So Dain wouldn't know why the White Cloaks as an organization are sending this many people to the Two Rivers. You know, if
No.
there was a dark friend that Child Bayar told him about along the way, or like when Child Bayar arrived there after stopping off at the Fortress of the Light to give the news of how Jeffrey Bornhald died and all that stuff. Like if he knew about Perrin being a dark friend, that wouldn't tell Dain why the White Cloaks as an organization would send that many people to the Two Rivers.
Yeah.
That's
I
why
think
he's
there's-
surprised
I think
that
there's just a
many
lot
men
of
are there.
things pulling all together in the same direction. People with their own little agendas.
Well, that's-
Yes,
Yeah.
we know
opportunity.
that, but Dain doesn't know that. That's what
No.
Jody's saying. Because in the book it says Dain doesn't. He's sort of, why are we here with this many men? What are we doing here? I want to be here because I want to find the guy that killed my dad, according to Child Bayar. And Ordeith seems to want to be here.
But that's
But,
another confusing thing, Moritz, because there's no mention of that. Dane's not thinking,
Of
oh,
what?
lucky I'm here to get Perrin, who killed my dad. He doesn't mention that at all in this part.
No, he doesn't.
So I'm
But
also
it doesn't
got
mean that
that-
he's not thinking it. He's just,
Yeah,
when
but we're
talking about all
reading-
the men that he has there.
we're reading his thoughts, you know? He should be thinking about this. Like, I'm in the Two Rivers, the exact place I want to be, where this dark friend who killed my dad is from. Or, you know. So I don't know. That just seemed
Maybe.
odd that he didn't mention that. But anyway, look, we got a lot to get
guess.
through still. Let's
Yes.
back on the road, people. Anyway, this is almost finished. This part of it. He's giving then orders to move south, which according to the map is down to Eamon's Field. So and while in the middle of his orders to move his men, Ordeith starts frothing at the mouth and talking basically to himself, saying, "We will scour the Two Rivers, we will flog them and flay them and sear their souls. He will come to me now," with spittle coming out of his mouth. And the last thing is Dain going, "Oh my God, Pedronile has, paired me with a madman."
He's
so,
a
yeah.
madman.
Dude, worse than that. We're not done yet. This immense first chapter continues. We now jump all into the Arith Ocean. And if you look on the map and go west from Falme, there's a group of islands there called Isle Somera that are Seafolk Islands.
Not all the maps have that name on it, but
Ah,
yes.
that is there. Trust me.
I've seen the
Anyway,
islands, and I sort of, through process of elimination, figured out those are the ones.
Those are the ones. Now, the Sean-chan, we join up with them again. We're with the High Lady Suroth. She is standing on a balcony overlooking the port of Cantorin.
Mhm.
And they have captured all the Seafolk ships and cowed them and have taken the people off, all the crews off, and are keeping them on land under guard. And they are regrouping, basically, on these islands. She now has command of the return after High Lord Turak's disastrous attempt at it.
Well, his head fell off.
Yeah, or his guts dropped out. Who
He
knows?
got sliced in half.
Yes, it continues. So anyway,
Point being, he failed.
yes, he did. All right.
He be in pieces.
Yeah. So she's even got herself some Death Watch guards, which I assume were leftovers from Turok, because I don't think anyone has joined them from Seanchan to give them reinforcements. They're just regrouping there on these islands.
Yes, they fled,
Yeah.
and that's sort of the first island they came to due west.
Which is very handy to have them there. So that helped. So the
For them.
Randlanders, yes. The Randlanders think they've driven them off into the ocean, but they're just waiting a little bit off the coast for their second return.
Much like Jaws in all the movies.
Or any horror film, for that matter. So yeah, anyway, the Death Watch guards, they only serve the Empress. So it's a very high honor, because you know these guys are all about their honor. So anyway,
Yeah.
I tell you. And she is now in a greatly elevated position. Again, her honor is improving here, but that also puts her in a much more dangerous position, because you don't want to mess around with the blood. They don't play. They murder you in your sleep. They are vicious, vicious people. And here's where we hear that quote for the first time. On the heights, the paths are paved with daggers. Even becomes the title of a book later on. So she's
also a dark friend.
Yes, she's the one that helped capture the girls.
Yes, so when she's talking about walking on a razor's edge as well, I think that is in some way alluding to the fact that she is now beholden to both the Empress and the Great Lord of the Dark.
The Great Lord of the Dark. Villy, call him a dark friend. So, also, just anything to do with the blood, you're in shit. I wouldn't want to be involved with them being dark friend or not. I don't want to play in those games. So anyway, she goes back inside, where she is interrogating one of the Daman, Pura, who is formerly Reimer Gelfrey of the Yellow Aja, captured and leashed and lying there prostrate on the ground for questioning. Her spies, Suroth spies, have told her that Rand has proclaimed himself the Dragon Reborn. So, a Seanchan on a group of islands in the middle of the Aryth Ocean knows about what happened in Tyr before the Amerlin Seat does. Unless, Villy, this is another timeline chapter thing.
I'm saying timeline jumps all over the show, man. All over the show.
Man.
Seagulls fly. Actually, albatross fly a lot faster than pigeons.
Oh, she might have Raken and Toraken and things that...
And she also does have Magic Woman that can do some stuff that...
well, like a tower, like a white tower full of eyesight. They got that's no excuse. It's the big flying leathered creatures. Those things. Yeah. Anyway, so she knows about the Dragon Reborn, and she wants answers. So she's got also two Sildama there kneeling beside Reimer. One of them, Elwyn, has been raised to the voice of the blood. Now, even to me reading it the third time, I still don't know what any of this shit means. But anyway, that's never happened before. It's a very, very high position, and a Suldam being raised that high. She was raised by Suroth herself to buy her silence, because this is the person, to refresh everyone's memories, that found Rena and Seta, who were collared by Nynaeve, because they were Suldam, not Daman. So she knows the dirty little secret. Now, I don't know why she didn't just kill her. I would have... another one of those, why leave them alive? If they're such terrible people. And she's a dark friend, Suroth, why not just kill Elwyn? But anyway.
Well, if you want to, if you had to put on your dark friend hat, if she wanted to bring down the Seanchan Empire, having people to corroborate a story about Suldam being able to channel is not actually a bad thing.
All right.
You know, like she's walking, that's the razor's edge she's talking about. If she was not a dark friend, if she was pure Seanchan, she probably would have killed Elwyn.
All right.
But she probably in her dark friend capacity thinks, okay, this is something that I can use to, crack the Seanchan Empire from within. Is my assumption, because I had the same thought.
Yeah.
Just kill her. Just as annoyed as I was with Leandrin for not killing Mother Gwenna.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely, she should have killed her.
Dude, that
She
dark
should have
fit
killed
hat
Elwyn.
is looking good on you. It fits so well. Why didn't you kill Mother G? What are you talking about? Not Mother G. But anyway, so now we have her. This is basically what's been going on. Now they have old Pura, and I'm going to refuse to call her that, Reimer, because she is of the Yellow Aja. And they are, and she's trying to get answers from her, and she wants to know how the Aes Sedai are controlling Rand. And Reimer's like, they are not. Like, I swear to God, like, they would never ever do that. But she's of course terrified and cowed, and it's been a shit time for her. And I mean, even Suroth thinks to herself, she knows that the Aes Sedai cannot lie, that they've been bound by the Oath Rod. So when Reimer tells her,
They tested it.
yes,
They tortured her and tried to make her say that something is untrue. You know, like that
Yeah.
that color is blue when it was red, that sort of thing.
yeah. And but she still doesn't believe her. She still thinks that it could be some Aes Sedai trickery, and she's not wrong either, because the Aes Sedai do lie when that suits them. If they word everything right, blah blah blah, as we all know. So she's not a fool either. But she's very skeptical about this because she thinks that they must be controlling him somehow. How do they control Rand? You put him next to Moraine and just hope for the best, and she can somehow influence him a little bit. But she's saying no, the Aes Sedai, if they knew about him, they would capture him and gentle him. That's just the end of it. And Suroth thinks to herself, she wishes that she could have like a second Aes Sedai here to test this theory on. She could question them separately. So she doesn't know what happened, and I had to go find out what happened, because there were two Aes Sedai that were captured and chained and collared in Felmay. I'm just trying to find out what the other ones. I've got it in my notes here somewhere. Yes, I did this. Shireen Caminel was the other one. I think that she was a white. Oh, no, she was a blue. She was a blue. And she goes by the name of Mylan. So anyway, after the attack on Felmay, one of them, Reimer, was taken with Suroth, and she's here on the island. And the other one actually was taken back to Seanchan.
Right.
We find out later in the books.
Assumedly.
No, she is. It's confirmed in one of the later books. Yeah. She arrives at the docks, and the daughter of the Nine Moons, Tuon, actually buys her on the docks and takes her back when she comes with her. So she is still alive, and she's on her own little side mission of going across the ocean at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah. She also knows that a man channeled at Felmay, because none of the Daman or the Suldam sensed when there was crazy channeling going on that a woman was channeling. So she's thinking, I'm wondering if at this point, because she knows a man was channeling and she knows Aes Sedai were there, and she wants to know how they're controlling him. Does she already have a male Adam? Because I know someone has one in the story we find out later on. And the plan is to collar Rand.
It's on display in Tanchico, I think. And I think they're called Bands of Dominion or Bands of Domination or something like that. It's not called an Adam. It's like a different thing. I think it's two bracelets that lead to a collar.
Yeah, like I think two women have to collar the man at the same time, or some crazy. Well, it's online or in the books that we're going to read now.
Yes.
So
Raffo.
yes, it's all there. All right. But I don't know if she already has one, because she wants to know how they're controlling him, or maybe she just knows about this device from Seanchan history, and she maybe thinks that the Aes Sedai already have it, and that's how they're controlling Rand. Anyway, speculation abounds again. There's also no news. Yeah. There's also no news. She has no news from Seanchan whatsoever. So she doesn't know what's going on, whether they're sending more ships, whether the Empress is coming herself. And this is that fine razor's edge that she's walking on. She's got all these plans, and she thinks she's in charge again, but it could all just fall out underneath her at any plan, at any time. And if you are a dark friend, then fuck you. This is something you're going to have to deal with, you know? You can't complain about this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's how it ends with her then. There's a little bit of tension that we need to mention here, because Elwyn is now using this opportunity of her newfound power to overstep her bounds just a little bit. And there's another scene here where Suroth is talking to herself and kind of mumbles things out loud, just like Elida did in the tower. Yeah. And Elwyn is right behind her. And she goes, yes, but you have to keep all three alive. So she's keeping the Renna and Seta and Elwyn alive because she must. I don't know what the reason is as to why
Suroth
she must.
is sort of like, she's thinking it's a closely kept secret. Only 3 deaths would make it even closer. And that's what Elwyn hears. Those 3 deaths obviously being Elwyn, Seta, and Renna's.
And then she goes, yes, but you need to keep all three alive. So really, these women in power really need to keep their thoughts to themselves. Stop mumbling out loud. You never know who's behind you. So anyway, and that's basically how it ends. She goes back out onto the balcony where she overlooks the harbor and continues her dark, disgusting thoughts.
Well, that's it for the episode. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Come back next week. That was 8.5 pages of notes.
That was a terrible reminder of all the horrible people in the story that's still there.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
Except for Min in the beginning, but it quickly turned to Elida. So
and there are so many more terrible people.
Yeah.
It's like, here we go. Here's Min. Min comes in and okay, let's go to Elida. Padan Fain. Oh, come on, let's top it off with some
White cloaks.
White cloaks.
I'm gonna do my notes backwards because we've just finished off with Suroth, and I can't now just start talking about the winds blowing across the fingers of the dragon. When Suroth is talking about the how to control a mail channel or something, she talks about how people still remember the armies of the night in Sean-Chan. I immediately thought, oh, the armies of the night. She must mean the Shadowspawn that were also in Sean-Chan. But no, the armies of the night were what Luther Hawkwing, or Arthur Hawkwing's son, that went to settle there. It's what they called all the natives. So native Sean-Chan warriors with all their exotic beasts and their channelers that use the power as a weapon. Those were the armies of the night. Not the shadow.
I also just assumed that there was like their Trolloc Wars,
Yes, exactly. Because we had spoken about it before. And I quickly Googled armies of the night and it's like, no, it's just the locals.
They must have been badass locals.
They would have been because they were using the power as a weapon.
You don't just call someone the army of the night, if you just walked all over
That's
them.
propaganda.
They call themselves that.
We're the good guys.
Dropping pamphlets.
They're the armies of the
airplanes.
night. Yeah. Those sinister bastards. Bet they're all left-handed.
Totally.
Then, working backwards through my notes, Ordeith also says, after his mad ramble about what we're going to do, he says, I promised him.
Yes.
Promised Rand or promised the Dark One? I'm thinking Rand.
Who knows? I don't know. I can't even speculate.
I think he's saying that like he set Rand an ultimatum, and Rand didn't meet it. He didn't come meet him at Termin Head, even though Rand was there.
Yeah, he did.
And we don't know what the hell Ordeith was or Mordith was doing or Fain was doing at the time. But he seems to be here now to take action and make good on his promise to sort of raise the two rivers to the ground. The men that came with Padan Fain are described as a sullen and frowning lot. And I don't think it is necessarily that Fain picked the worst of the worst to be his troop. I think he came with soldiers from the Fortress of the Light, and it's Mordeth's influence.
Yeah,
like those guards in Feldara, the guys that were in the prison cells. I think his influence is affecting them.
Yeah.
Gawain trains with the sword a lot. He says to Min that most days I'm there talking about the practice yards until the sun sets. He's training with Hamar the whole time, who is a blade master. So Gawain is no slouch with the sword, and as we know during the split, he actually kills Hamar, who is a true blade master. So Gawain is not. He's not far from being a blade master himself.
No. I'm just wondering, is it in this chapter as well, in this section where he says he can beat Galad now? Like,
yeah, 2 out of 5 times.
2 out of 5 times. Like he's getting better.
Yes. Yeah. Or he says the best that he's done is 2 out of 5 or something like it, where usually he just gets a drubbing.
Yeah.
Min makes mention of the fact that she doesn't trust any of the Aes Sedai. In fact, she equates being at the tower to being at Shaiol Ghul. She really does not want to be there. No. And when she says there's only one Aes Sedai that she trusts, and that's Moiraine, she also adds at the end, and that's most of the time.
Yeah.
So she doesn't even trust Moiraine all of the time.
They don't lend themselves to trustworthiness. It's not our fault.
You're not gonna do that by twisting your words all the time and
No.
twisting other people's words. Min also mentions that she's met Faulain once, and I couldn't remember where that is. I thought
Didn't
maybe it's
they?
when
Yeah, I don't know when they came back to the tower
Yeah,
the
they
first time
were.
all together. That Phelan.
Min was in the mountains. Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve came with Varen, and
But she
Faulain and
was,
Theodrin fetched them at the door. No, Min was still in the mountains with the rest
but
of
she
the
was
gang.
there right in the beginning when the girls first arrived, before their all
Yes,
training. She
yes,
was also there, so she
yes.
probably bumped into her somewhere.
Yes, so I had the exact same thought. Jed. I
Ah.
went back and I read the chapter about the girls getting back to the tower, but then I realized, no, wait, Min wasn't with them. She was with Rand and Perrin in the mountains. And then I think the meeting must have happened, off page.
Yeah. Look, there's not a lot of accepted running around, so they
No.
surely would have bumped into each other.
And then my last note, which is at the very beginning of chapter 1, is I didn't realize, first of all, that Tyr is not on the coast. It's that whole big delta from the river. It's called the Fingers of the Dragon. And then Tyr is like some ways up the river. So it's not on the coast at all. So when people are sailing to Tyr from Ilion, they are sailing upriver to get to it.
It's said now in the start of the next chapter is that Tyr is only positions once the river is not salty anymore. So that's usually quite
Right.
far up in a delta or in a river mouth.
And the last thing, I didn't realize that Dragonmount is actively smoking.
I knew that.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, it's a volcano.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a volcano. Not all volcanoes are, smoking. Like I knew it was a volcano.
then they just a
I always
mountain.
Let's get into that now.
Okay.
No, don't. I'm joking.
Good thing you stopped me because I was about it.
Whip out the dictionary.
Anything else? I mean, God.
Well, look, you don't notice it's smoking, Moritz. Obviously, when you look out your window, you don't notice it's smoking because the tip of the mountain is above the clouds, most of the time.
That's true.
So
That's
you
true.
don't constantly see the smoke billowing out. But on a clear
So are they
day,
clouds or are they clouds of smoke?
well, I think that they're just clouds.
Okay.
Sorted.
All right. Should we move on to chapter 2?
Yes.
Okay, then. Let's get on with it. Chapter 2 is called Whirlpools in the Pattern, and this one is yours, Villy.
There we go. Now that we've caught up with all of the horrible people in the story in a very drawn out, expansive chapter, let's get on with our good fellows, the guys, and catch up with them there. Now, the story or the chapter starts off and takes us into Tyr as the wind would blow over the fingers of the dragon, which is nicely explained to be mangrove type swamps, and it's clammy and it's hot, and the people are there, and it flies into the big stone of Tyr in its massive size, and we are in Perrin's room. Perrin is sitting on the chair, and Fael is pacing up and down. And Thinky Boy is thinking hard about it before he asks anything, but eventually does drum up the courage and not really understanding half the stuff that she's spilling out about Rand not having even time to see him and why they're still here, and she wants to go. She feels it's time to leave, and Perrin's like, no, not time to leave. We need to stay here. It's now been 2 weeks after the stone fell, and the word has gotten out that the stone had fallen. I mean, it's now common news well up the rivers. It's as fast as the pigeon goes over weeks. It's spread over there.
I'm sure most of those pigeons die along the way. They never reach their destination.
They certainly don't reach Tarvalon.
No. But yeah, it's common news, and Fael is now at this stage she's not enjoying it there. She wants to get out. She's a bit afraid. Perrin now feels that he's now identified his role as a Taviran in this. He's not even, he's almost accepted it by himself. And Fael had questioned him whether he is doing this because he's told to do it. And he's like, no, this is me. I know this is my path. I need to follow this. I've got something to help Rand get where he needs to be, and I accept that much, so I can't go. And she then starts, and up and down in the room, and eventually she's down, sort of on Perrin's knees as he's sitting down, trying to win him over to her side of the argument. When Perrin hears a crowing chicken or
Rooster.
a rooster.
You're trying very hard not to say cock.
You can say cock.
That's it. A rooster.
A cockerel.
Yeah, he
Crowing
was.
chicken. Lovely.
Yeah. So he feels sort of immediate chills, and at that time, Fala had already stood up, and she sort of wiped the skirts down, and she also sort of hugged a coat over, or a jacket. It's like this chills, and the next minute, Perrin sort of sees his axe fall over by itself, and like in a Harry Potter movie, it starts shaking, and all of a sudden it has a life of its own, and his axe is going for him, and he grabs the axe last minute by the handle, and he's trying to control the axe, and now the axe is going as he's fighting it and trying to get Fael. And this is just now what is happening here. He trying to control this axe, and as he tries to hold it down, it would twist. And he eventually tells her, like, get out of the room, like, just get out, like, there's nothing you can do. And with one hand holding the axe, he still manages to get her out and latch the door, and sort of, okay, now it's me and you, axe. What is happening here? I hate you so much already, and now you're trying to kill me. And somehow gets control of the axe in sort of a last struggle off, and the axe doing swooping motions at his head every time he gets it to point in a different direction, and the spike nearly driving into his chest in trying to the scuff to try and save Fael from the axe. The axe gets itself lodged in a massive blow into the door, and there it stays. And he's like, is it dead? And yeah, he's just peeved, but then he realized he hasn't heard her screaming outside the door, because she was going and wailing off at him for pushing her out of the room because she wants to help. And as he opens, she's standing there in like absolute shock with the sound of the thud and the clang and the strike into the door, and the axe probably protruding through the door, you'd think, on the other side.
I think it is in the chapter that it is. Like, she was banging on the door from the outside, and the axe came through in front of her face.
It stops within an inch of her face.
Yeah. Like,
She says as much.
that's why she's quiet now. That's why she's so shocked.
Yeah, she's like, okay, no, but then throws herself around Perrin, obviously, like that the thought of losing him in this, whatever that was that happened. No one is sure over here. There's some crazy magic going on. And that's where they basically end that one. I know. They make the decision, no, this Rand nearly killed him. Like, his first thought is that that happened was Rand. Rand had channeled something and it went wrong, and Rand nearly killed me. Like, this is bullshit. He's upset about this now. I need to go and have a chat to Rand. And they set off to go and find Rand. And then we go to the next scene, identical timelines.
Oh,
And,
we're on identical timelines.
We are in identical timelines throughout this chapter, which is beautiful. There's no timeline shenanigans.
We have a very handy rooster noise
Yes.
from outside to tie all of them together.
Exactly. And we with Matt, and Matt's doing what Matt does. He's gambling, and this time he's playing poker. Poker is his game of not of choice, but he wants to not win coppers. He wants to hit the big money now, and then for that he's got to go to Vegas. So he's got all the lordlings who turn out to be a really unpleasant bunch of people, and he's entertaining these unpleasant bunch of people because he can win a lot more at this, and he wants to hit the road and get out of there. So he's sitting with these people now. They're playing a game that he's not used to, because they won't lower themselves to play dice, because that's a peasant's game. So they've got hand-painted cards, and some of these cards are now already updated to show he believed some of them to be Rand as the Lord of Cups or whatever the highest suit is in this deck of cards. And they start going on about Rand wanting to change the law that a peasant can sort of go to a magistrate and lay a charge against mistreatment or whatever, and sort of trying to get Matt's influence and knowing that he's tied up, like this can't be. But they also had quite a bit of wine, one of them excessively so, that Matt was scared he was going to spew on the table at some stage. So they're shit talking now about their extra activities with the peasants of the lands and how that should be permitted, and that Rand should remember that you can't include the fisherman's daughter in this. And a lot of jokes going around, and a couple of times Matt just thinks he wishes he was in a tavern because then he could belt them. And the problem is they won't belt him back now, so it would be an unfair fight. And he actually wants a fair fight, I think. But his luck is starting to tingle, and he thinks like, oh no, I've got to hold on, because as this whole bad talk situation is going around, they're still playing hand after hand in a game which seems very much like 5-card draw. And they every time chuck in a silver and they pull another card. And now Matt had a glance at his cards and he saw, and it's like, well, he's got it started off with 3 of a kind. And it moved then when his luck started tickling to 4 of a kind. And he's like, okay, cool. Coming to the end of it, he's like, he knew the card was going to be another high card, and it turned out to be the Lord of Flame or whatever. Can't even remember
Ace
what
of
card. It's
Spades.
the emerald on it. Ace of Spades. Not yet a spade or a sword. It's just still have as a little flame in her hand. And he's like, oh, here we go. So he in between all of this, he told the story of the Maiden's kiss, and sort of entertain them with all of that, and how he was set off to go and find out about this, and with the wrong Maidens of the Spear. I think Dain in Chide again asked them about the Maiden's kiss, and he was surrounded by spears in the neck, and sort of bring out a little bit of conversation there, but a lot of it maybe encouraging them to do it so that they could experience that for themselves and maybe lose their heads. But he sort of edges them on. Are we here to gamble, or are we here to talk stories? Like, get a move on. And some of them's already folded, and he's sort of thinking like, yep, this is where he's going to go big. He's going to make 4 days worth of gambling in this one hand. He's going to get out. And with that, there's a rooster that crows outside the window. And he thinks about this is a bad omen. Like, his mom always said something about this being such a terrible omen, or someone. And with that, he realized the Emerald on his card doesn't have a flame in her hand anymore. And she's all of a sudden got a dagger and stabs him in the hand.
The bitch.
And he's like, what the hell? And with this 2-dimensional paper man, Emerald, and the other royalty of the cards that he had in his hand, he sort of fell over backwards, and it was like he was falling slow motion, like as if in honey or syrup, or Inception style timing, like super slow moving. And Matt can see the other cards as well. Have got people coming out, and swords are being drawn around him. And he's just, what the hell is this? What is happening here? But quick enough to be able to go to his knives. And Tom had taught him well that you can never have too many knives on you. So he had ample to spare. And he throws the first knife, and it goes straight into this paper emerald that's now stepped out of the card frame that kept on growing bigger, and hovering over him with this knife. And it goes straight into its heart. And then at the same time lets out another 2 knives, and all of a sudden, boom, he falls off the chair. Every time is back to normal, and these cards are pinned up where the knives landed after penetrating them, and they're back to being normal cards. And he's like,
except one still has a knife.
Oh yes, one of the emerald cards still has a knife.
It never changed back to a flame. It's still holding a knife.
So it was killed. couldn't change again, or
Mhm.
something. So he is thinking at this, like, okay, this game is over. He picks up his purses. He's pissed off. But before that, he
Well,
gets
the
his
other
knives.
lords are like scrambling on the ground. They're just picking up their money. They just want to go.
Yeah.
The evening done.
And he decides, like, stuff this. These cards, he pulls his knives out, but he makes sure before he pulls the knife out that he like breaks the card off it and tears it up so that they don't come waltzing out of the cards again. And again, thinking like, the fuck is Rand doing? Like, poor Rand cops the blame straight off the bat. Yeah, it's only him that could have done something like this. This doesn't make any sense. But he's like, all right, he's going to gather his things. Let's go see Tom about this and see what's happened that side.
I think Matt and Perrin are both blaming Rand because of what happened in the mountains. Rand caused that massive earthquake.
Earthquake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
what else could you explain this? Like, nobody in the world has seen this before.
I don't know. Maybe a Forsaken?
Yeah. Well, that's what Rand thinks.
It is.
We now move over to Rand. And Rand is busy having dreams. On his 5-person wide mega throne bed, he's now in the highest lord room that there is in the place, that stood empty for generations because no lord felt they were high enough to put claim to that. And that was the last king before the bending of the knee to Arthur Hawkwing.
Yeah.
So back all that way ago. So he's the
It was
first.
the king's chambers.
Yeah, it was the king's room. Ornate, gold, big, lavish, just opulent and over the top. So he's rolling around there. He's having a nightmare about Moraine poking him with a stick and leading him to Swan, who's got a noose in her hands ready for him. And
he's a fish. He's a 5-pound trout trying to elude Moraine and Swan, the 2 expert fishermen.
And then wakes and goes back to dream, and he's got Min, and he's back in the Waterwoods, back home, and it's all familiar. And it's not just Min, it's Min and Elaine, and they are not looking their normal faces at him. They're looking in their naughty faces at him. And this dream is going places, and he's getting nervous. And Elaine, he looks at her, and she's taking off her dress and pulls over her frock and what the layers of dressing that she has. Min's got quite less. She's just had to loosen her shirt strings. No buttons, shirt strings. And he's getting even more nervous, and he turns around, and there's Egwene, and she's sort of like giving him a disapproval, sad eyes, and turns and runs. And he's like, no, wait, it's not what you think.
That's totally what you think.
And Min and Elaine pipe up, it is what you think.
It is. You're gonna get naked in this pool and swim with us. We're gonna skin it up. And he recites to the fact that he's probably going to skinny dip with him anyway and jumps in the pool, making a big bomb splash. No, he wakes up and
Cannonball.
he's so he wakes up and he realizes where he is and is lying there, and he's tired, and he's got to think about all the stuff that's going to be done the next day, because it's again back to Lord meetings in and out through the day.
The dragon
And
responsibilities.
Yeah, it's all glory when you grab the sword, but no one told him about the paperwork.
No, they never do.
No, so he lies there and he's like, whoa, someone's in the room trying to steal my sword. Just off the bat. Oh, or possibly trying to kill me. But his first thing is he's thinking about after his glorious dream is his sword.
Yes. Someone's trying to touch his sword.
So he reaches out to the true source, and he is he's ready to pounce. And in one foul move off the bed, like a cat doing a somersault in the air, he's got his flame blade with the herons out and ready. He lights up the room, and he surveys the room, and there's no assassin, but there is someone. It's Lady Berylane, and she is scantily clothed, if at all. And she's silent, but sort of like, no, it's just me. and lets her nightgown fall off to reveal her little nighties underneath. That is, again, very revealing. And Rand is sweating bullets. He doesn't know what to do. He's like, no, we can talk tomorrow. We can have a talk now. She's like, no, we can talk now. Sort of striding closer to him. And he doesn't know where to look. And he's just feeling guilty, the poor boy. And she comes even closer and she's like, no, well, you know why I'm here. And you know what I want. It's like, it's enough sort of word foolery now. It's like, I'm not dressed like this for nothing. This is going to happen. And Rand then decides to tie off a weave of air and put a wall between him and her, pushing her, the carpet, her belongings, and this footstool back with her, sort of to be blocked off. And she's sort of afraid and is like, well, I didn't want to have to do that, but you don't get it. Like, no, he shuts her down. And as he's busy shutting her down, he sees she's looking over his shoulder, and her eyes go wide and big. And Rand is not quite sure, but in that instant, he has got his blade back in his hand, his heron-marked fire lightsaber, and out of the mirrors steps Rand with his sword, ready, and he realizes. But just before that, there was also the crow of the rooster cock. And he looks at all the dressing mirrors, and he sees a reflection, a mirror of himself running around as in villainous or mischievous, with no eyes, and looks like him, has a sword like him, and he sees the one actually climbing out, another one, and he decides to channel a bunch of power and shatters all the mirrors.
Eyes.
No, they had no eyes. They had no like eye reflection, like dead eyes.
Or maybe they're dead eyes, but they had eyes.
They looked exactly like him. In a story in which we have Mudral, that is an important distinction to make.
Okay, that's true. No, there was eyes with sockets. They were just looking in different directions because they were dead. So Rand is now channeling a huge amount of power and breaks and shatters, and there's glass everywhere. And there is a ensuing blade fight between him and three of him. And it's as if every stroke is being met and every attack is being met. He just doesn't get, like, he's trying to break through, but all of his power, and eventually he's so sliced up by blows that had sort of half landed on him. And then he lands a good blow and he feels uneasy about it because he's cutting himself in every blow that he lands. And he eventually tumbles onto the bed, and the feathered duvet has been sliced open, and one of him's on, and he puts his hand on the dresser sort of to push himself up, and he gets a stab in the hand. And what I can only assume is like a small mirror somewhere had let out a small little Rand that stabbed him in the hand, and he decides to grab little Rand and squeeze him, but not squeeze
Hang
him.
on.
But he starts feeling...
Tug him, if you will.
Billy's only getting it now. How did you not get this when you're making your notes?
I didn't have a dirty mind when I was talking about little Rand. All right. He grabs the tiny mirror Rand on the table. And he feels sort of his life heat drawing out of him, but he's so full of the power, and he just draws more on the power. And eventually this tiny mirror Rand explodes or pops. I like to think more of like a bubble that's popping and just gone, then exploding, which ties into what the event is, I suppose, in a bit, like a bubble. But yeah, he then realizes that it's not going to be a sword that's going to slay this foe, and he takes the gamble and lets his sword go, and it works. They also, as mirror images, let the sword go, and he's okay, cool. Well, now I've got to touch them to do what I did again. And with that, there's a scuffle, and they all jump onto him, and they grab onto him, and they're sliding over the ground, and he kind of feels the life force draining out of him, like they're sucking something out of him, and he tries to remember what he's done, but he just draws on more and more and more of the power. It's like, come on, I've got to do it again. I've got to do it again. And then with that, the first one, it just feels like a shake. And then both the other two at the same time sort of pops into him, and he absorbs them in whatever this is that's going down. And just with such ferocity that it throws him over the floor and sort of like slices his back open even more on the glass that's everywhere. And okay, so Rand is lying there and he realizes, okay, well, Berlaine is still standing over there and she's seen all of this, and he's just looking like that mean devil from Event Horizon, that sliced up person. That was the image that came to mind. She just is at the stage like now she's really not keen to be in that room anymore. And whatever frame of mind she was in when she walked in there, she is definitely not in anymore. She's now holding her
The
clothes
mood is
bundled.
gone.
I'd totally forgotten she was in the room. I was like, oh, fuck, Baron's still there, trapped behind a wall of air.
Yeah.
I don't want to know if she's I think she's like in a box of air because she can't escape. And I don't think she would have been. Okay, question. Would she have been harmed by the flying glass and stuff there? Because there's no note of her being, she was put in a box of air.
Yeah, it's a barrier, so it would have stopped.
There's just
Yeah.
a
Would have stopped
barrier,
anything
yeah.
from
So
getting
because she
to you.
tried to, after he released her out of it, she like felt like, okay, cool, it's gone.
She tests it, yeah.
She
A French
tested.
mime.
But at that stage there, she's like, yes, Lord Dragon, I'll be gone, Lord Dragon. You won't hear a thing about me ever again, Lord Dragon. I'm so sorry for trying to come onto you like a common town wench. Like, yeah, totally over the top. But he basically instructs her to leave and not to speak to anyone about it. Like, just, like, I'll get Moraine to heal me, but first I need to sit down in this here chest and bleed.
He's a bleedy boy.
He's a bleedy boy.
Yeah, I got some bleeding to do.
Got some bleeding to do on this
I think he sits on the chest with Kalandor across his
over
knees.
his legs and just sitting there and going like, all right, well, I think that sigh was more sort of a Monday workday sigh. Like your personal
There we
life
go.
shit that means mirrors broken in your bedroom and you cut up and you had to
Yeah.
to disappoint a woman in your bedroom and send her away. And then you're like,
Billy's
God, now I've got to
accustomed
go to
that.
work and I've got to go. I'll get healed soon enough, but I've got to go and face these lords and the questions and the halls of peoples.
It's just
Yeah.
it's just one of those sighs after another Monday on the Monday at work. Shit.
Yeah, so it's that's pretty much that chapter, and that sums up that very long but very eventful and fun first night after 2 weeks in the Square Stone of Tia.
Yeah.
Did you pick up anything you wanted to elaborate on then, Joe? I've got a couple notes.
No, I just also picked up right in the beginning when he said obviously mangroves, and I was like, oh yeah, totally. I also, as soon as I read spider root trees, I was like, mangroves.
I was like,
cool.
mangroves. Why did you just say mangroves? That makes so much more sense.
Because they're fantasy.
Not fantasy
mangroves.
enough.
It was a very because after that first and I mean that previous chapter was a bit of a slog, but reading this and that nice fly of wind flying, it's almost like a drone going in, and you're like, oh, this tropical place, and the river forks like a big delta.
Death.
Yes. that mat scene. These lords are cunts. Is the only way to
They're
describe
pretty
them.
shit.
I mean, they are bummed that they can't rape poor girls anymore and get away with it. Is what they're bummed about. And Matt is just trying not to punch them in their fucking faces. And that's why he tells that story about the Maidens of the Spear and everything, just to change the subject, get them to spend more money, because he feels like, well, if I can take their money, at least I can get back at them somehow.
Yeah. Estienne, the sort of drunk one that's got the plain face like a farmer, he later joins the band of the Red Hand.
Oh, really?
He does. And he leads the contingent of the Red Hand of the band that goes with Elaine into the final battle.
Nice.
Because I was wondering, they're looking at all of those names.
Every time I read a name that's sort of like, like rings a little bell somewhere, I go and Google it, and then it turns out there's like maybe not like a whole arc for them or anything, but there's these like very definitive plot points that come up, and it's so cool that Robert Jordan put these like what seem like total throwaway minor characters into the story in the beginning, and then they have significant actions later in the story.
He was about to puke on the table. He was so drunk. And then later
Mm-hmm.
on, leading an army in the last battle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you have come far.
Much like Matt.
Perrin can smell nervousness. So his sense of smell is really like evolving, right? Like for a long time, it was just actual smells. Then you could start smelling fear, and now it's like nuances of fear, right? Like now you can discern nervousness, which is pretty
That's
cool.
another thing I wanted to say from the last recording we did as well. We didn't focus enough on the fact that when he opened that door and saw Fail lying on the ground unconscious, that he tried to listen for her heartbeat. Like he used his wolfish. I mean, we mentioned it, but that's fucking insane, man. Like that's what he went to straight away. Is like I can hear heartbeats from a person lying across the room. Like I could do that. Like whoa. And the only reason he couldn't is because her heartbeat had become so slow because her body's mimicking death. But could he have? Like, can he hear heartbeats now?
Well, in that moment of panic when like this woman that he, even though hadn't admitted to himself that he obviously loves, is, lying there on the ground unconscious, he just went to like whatever he can do, and he went straight to his wolf powers, which is awesome.
And which is something we didn't focus on in details. That journey that he's had is that he's so reluctant. All these books, and now he's totally into it, smelling nervousness, listening for heartbeats.
Hey, you needed 2.5 books to get over that. It's a thinky boy. It takes a bit of time. Now he can revel in his powers.
That's why he has to take book 5 off. He needs a break now.
He says to Fail when they're busy sort of arguing, he has this one sort of response to her, and you can see that he hurt her feelings, like when he snaps at her. And he mentions that he's just done it. He knows that if you act too quickly, you can hurt people. And we've always thought of him sort of doing that in a physical sense, right? Like if he doesn't watch himself, he could actually physically hurt someone, but he applies that to everything. Like that's why he's so considered, like he's always trying to think things through because he doesn't want to hurt anyone. And it's not just physically. He doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Like he's really, really careful not to step on anyone's toes. And when he does do it, he notices it, which is more than I can say for most people I know today. It's a very admirable quality.
That, and I mean, I didn't go into the detail, obviously, of his discussion with Fail and how they were to and froing about her wanting to leave and needing to stay in that. But I found that to be very interesting. Like now I'm looking at it more as if, like you said in the beginning when we started this, like this romance stories. That is now we just missed completely I missed for sure.
Yes.
Completely in the first reading. And it's actually very well written. I've actually enjoyed it. It stood out for me in that as almost a favorite moment, but not quite.
No.
Well, it was your favorite moment of the previous book.
Yeah, previous book, and I don't but I missed that, I think, and I'm happy that I'm reading that now and seeing that and being mature
and talking
enough.
about it. Yes, yeah. Perrin is very much torn between like his loyalty to Rand, knowing that he has to play a role in this, whatever this is, wanting to be around Fail, but then also wanting to keep her safe. So he's trying to like consider what is he going to do. He definitely doesn't want her to stay around Rand. He's trying to convince her to go. Or at least he's thinking to himself that he's going to try and convince her to go. But he's also in love with her, so he wants to be with her. So then he's like having to mull over all these like complex decisions, which makes for a much deeper story than just the muscle-bound blacksmith smashing Madrol's heads in with hammers.
What I was going to say as well is that their relationship, one of the things I remember from all previous rereads is that she is frustrated with him for not challenging her enough, that he's too timid and lets her get like, she wants to fight with him. She likes the conflict in the relationship. And this is the first scene where he shouts at her. And I thought that's odd that she would look hurt or upset, but she gets over it very, very quickly. And this is
very
like
much so.
That beginning of that thing where she wants the challenge in the relationship.
Well,
Mm.
there's a clear difference in the thought of the writer in these opening chapters, because File wants a little bit of fire out of Perrin. Lane tells Rand that if you want to treat me harshly, you can go harshly at me in uncertain terms. What she wants there, it's something else has changed as well in this the approach to these characters' relationships and sexuality, maybe. Or it's been spiced up a bit more than it was in the other books.
Oh, they
I
are
can
getting
s-
older and more mature.
I can see
Mature.
Berelane's approach to that. Like, this a super powerful man. She doesn't know that he's a shy farm boy. Like, he's the Lord Dragon, and
Or
she's
mad.
or mad. Like, she sees a super
Mad as a
powerful man.
hat.
Mm.
And look, she's been spending a lot of time in Tyr, and we all know what the Lords of Tyr are like. Maybe that's how they
Yeah.
treat women, and she's trying to maneuver herself into a position.
Yes.
So she's using that as a tactic with Rand, but it's the wrong tactic with Rand.
I touch on that a little bit in the next chapter when she has that encounter with Lord Torian in the hallways. We'll get to that.
All right.
I had a chuckle at Matt thinking about Tom sort of just like charming all the women. Like he's just like he plays his harp a couple times. He's got all the like women spooning over him. Such a charismatic old guy. I know. Like in the story, isn't he? He's white gray, right? Like he is.
Yeah,
like
man. He's an
older
old
guy.
man.
Mustaches.
He's
Yeah. Bushy eyebrows, but the girls love him.
Yeah.
And Matt showing that he isn't just a complete idiot who just is. He's not just a hedonist, right? He's not just looking for the best time all the time. When he's gambling, he's only had one cup of wine the whole night. The servants have given up trying to refill his cup because he's staying sober. And it's like the wee hours of the morning, right? Like it's late at night. He's only had the one drink, which I was very proud of.
He's gone to work.
I couldn't do
at
that.
work.
Now, to jump to a completely different scene, when Rand has that dream about Min and Elaine in the forest, and Egwene sort of gives him that sad look and disappears into the forest, do you think that was actual Egwene?
Ooh, I
Dream
never
walking.
considered that. Maybe.
I don't know, but I'm going to see if Egwene makes mention of anything like that,
Oh, yeah.
I didn't think about that at all.
because it could be.
Oh, that would be awkward at the breakfast table
Quite.
the next day.
I don't know about you guys, but I've always had a mental image of Rand's never healed wound, his old wound. And in this, they describe it as less than an inch in diameter. So it's
a
not
circular
very big
wound.
at all.
Just a
I mean,
hole. like a big
circles come in all
gunshot.
sizes. But he was stabbed with a staff,
Very thin
a
stuff.
black charred staff. So that must have been a very thin staff.
Maybe it was a bamboo stuff.
Is that how you guys have always imagined it?
No, this is
No,
a
much
massive
bigger.
change, because mine was not so much the length or the girth of the staff wound,
Of Little Rand.
but I always thought it to be sort of a spear type stab wound, almost like Jesus in the side got a little stab.
Oh no, that's on you. You were stabbed with the
that's
staff.
me. You got stabbed with a staff, and it's more like that. It's not a slice, but it's a round wound. I always thought it to be like a blade wound.
I've always known that it was round, but I just thought it was bigger, like maybe the size of a like a tennis ball. Like that diameter is what I always imagined for whatever reason.
Me too. I always imagined it much, much bigger.
Which is crazy when you think that like Padan Fain later like cutting him with a dagger on just that little less than an inch diameter. Like how Taveran do you need to be to have that work out for you? But
Wow, but maybe
about Rand Taveran.
the wound gets bigger because he keeps on ripping it open. Like every 5 chapters, he gets into some scuffle and he rips it open again. So maybe by book 14, it is the size of a tennis ball.
It's his whole hip.
Yeah, it's this gaping
Half
wound
covered
in his
in
side.
gangrene. Also, just reassuring that this is not news to any of us, but that Rand actually mentions here that once he's seen a weave, he can recreate it.
Tying it off.
They're
That's
tying
handy.
off. Yeah.
It's like, I should
No,
That's
remember
all of
that.
them
It's like,
do
oh,
that.
this wall of air will be useful. Also, that tying off thing, that seems useful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Remember.
quite. Okay, if that's all, let's.
Yes.
These chapters are gargantuan, hey?
Yes.
Should we move on to chapter 3 then?
Yes. Chapter 3. I thought we were going to 6.
Chapter 3 is called Reflection. So now we join Perrin and Fail as they make their way to Rand's chambers to find out what the hell is happening, thinking that obviously that axe attack was his doing. The corridors are only dimly lit, and Perrin's eyes glow like burnished gold in the dark sections. So, like in those dark sections, he's walking with his eyes downcast as they're passing servants and stuff, and only when there's light does he sort of look up again. Which is just a cool mental image, right? Like this big blacksmith stalking down the corridor with.
Is it like headlights in his?
I wouldn't say
headlights in his
headlights.
head. Like when he's in the
He
dark,
freezes every time he passes a torch.
You put your high beams down.
Flash him. Perrin comments on how people seem to be afraid of him, even more so than usual after recent events. But Fail sort of just talks him down and says, look, like being friends with the Lord Dragon, that's something you're just going to have to get used to. And as they're walking, Perrin also takes note of how the stone is built to defend, with arrow slits everywhere, murder holes where the corridors.
I love the name of that.
Great
What is
name,
it? It's a hole for murder. A murder hole.
Let's call it a murder hole. But also like the super narrow and winding staircases and stuff with arrow slits in them as well. So I'm also imagining like all these passages, there has to be passages behind the walls for people to be in, to fire through and all that sort of stuff. So this is quite an intricate design. All of which meant fuck all for the couple hundred Aiel that just came in and took it.
Yeah.
Or just not even a couple hundred, just more than 100. They took it quite easily.
Yeah.
They also didn't need like Matt's hole in the wall or anything. They just climbed up it and took it.
Yeah. This is because they didn't have people in those murder holes ready to murder people. That was problem number one.
Murder holes mean nothing if they're unmanned.
Exactly.
Then they're just normal holes.
I think if the army walks up to take the stone, like they tried in the past, you'd be like,
yeah,
horns
No.
and
boys, get to the murder holes.
Everyone get to the murder hole. We got to do some murdering through this hole now. Loose through the murder hole.
A lot on his mind, old Perrin. Also wondering why Rand would single him out for an attack, and sort of wondering if Rand is already going mad. But as they come out of one of these little narrow stairwells on the way to Rand's chambers, they almost literally bump into a High Lord and two of his sort of guards or footmen standing with him, staring down the corridor, looking at Rand's chambers. And it seems very suspicious. The High Lord is Lord Torian. He's Estien's father. So Estien, the drunk, busy gambling with Matt, this is his dad, who also has a part to play later in the story. Not a major one, but a part nonetheless. So he's standing in the hallway with his two guards looking at Rand's chambers, and one of the guards is sort of like stretching his neck, and he turns around and he notices Perrin, and he quickly draws a foot of steel, starts drawing his sword, and the other guard is very quick behind him to do exactly the same thing. But they stop there, and they sort of, they obviously recognize who Perrin is, and Perrin addresses Lord Torian, and he makes a sort of thinly veiled comment along the lines of, thanks for looking out for the Lord Dragon. People in your place might not be so happy that he's here. And Torian just gives him sort of like a glib answer, like, oh, no, we've fulfilled our prophecy and we are here to serve the Lord Dragon and blah, 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 blah. And then while he's doing that, he's also sort of like eyeballing Fail a little bit, and he takes his leave and he sort of stalks off, and he gives her one last sort of lecherous look before walking off. And Perrin obviously had taken exception to this, which is why he was being so curt with this guy. And Fail chides him for being uncivil, even though she knows that she was being checked out. And Perrin sort of tells her that he was reacting to Torian's looks, and she says to him that, I don't need you to stand up for me. If I chose to, I will deal with him with a glance or a look. You know, like she knows. I mean, we also know that she's from the court of Saldea as well. So like dealing with nobility is not a problem for her. But Perrin doesn't know this. He thinks she's some rich merchant's daughter.
Yeah.
And besides that, she has backbone to spare, right? Like she
Yeah.
does not. She's not a pushover. So they continue walking towards Rand's rooms, but before they reach the end of the hallway, they notice a scantily clad Berlain all but running from Rand's rooms. Like if she was walking any faster, she would be running, and she looks upset. We know why, but as she makes her way past Perrin and Fail, Perrin decides to show Fail in this moment, like an idiot, how civil he can be. So he gives Berlain a bow that he thinks Matt would be proud of. You know, like if you're picking your battles very poorly, Perrin, like this is not bowing at the scantily clad woman is not going to curry favor with your loved one. But Berlain doesn't even glance at them. She just keeps going, and Perrin notices that she just reeks of fear, like proper dread. And Fail asks him, filling your eyes, are you? And he goes, she smelled of something. And so as Perrin trails off saying, you know, she smelled of something, he notices down the hallway that she's run, because he's sort of looking on after she's run off. And this is when High Lord Torian steps out of a crossing hallway, and he sort of grabs her by the arm, and he starts talking to her. Sort of looks like he's berating her, and she sort of argues back a little bit, and she rips her arm away from him roughly, and she sort of walks off again. And this time with a little bit more composure, she seems a bit more herself again after having that exchange. And Perrin hears him say something along the lines of Berlain overstepping herself, and then Torian offering her his protection. Now, one of the things that I read about High Lord Torian when I saw his name come up is that later he presents Rand with the treaty that they had signed with Mayene, which I think is the same one that Lan alludes to in the previous book when he says Mayene has just signed a treaty with Tyr for the first time in so many generations, and that Berlain has backbone, you know, and she wouldn't have done it, blah, 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 blah. So we know that Belol obviously was here in the stone, and that she was basically a captive. Do we know that? I mean, we suspect that because she had been there for much longer than what was normal. I immediately thought, okay, Torian seems very entitled. I wonder if Berlain was sort of promised to him as a prize or something for taking care of Mayene, because the treaty that he shows Rand allows Torian or Tyr to station as many troops as they want in Mayene. And Rand is pissed off by it. Like he burns it to ash, and he tells him to come back with a proper treaty that is not total bullshit, or he will hang him, or something along those lines. So there was definitely some kind of collusion happening, taking advantage of Mayene while one of the Forsaken was in charge in Tyr. And Torian seemed to be, at least, you know, on the surface level, to be some kind of beneficiary in whatever arrangement was reached. So I'm super suspicious of Torian. Like, I mean, his treatment of Berlain alone is, again, reprehensible, but he seems very entitled. So I wonder if there was some kind of deal struck in the background.
I also thought for a second there when he grabbed her as she came past, like, had he sent her to Rand's chambers and she failed, and that's why he was angry with her? But now, after you talked about that,
I think he was jealous.
Yes.
I think he was looking at Rand's chambers because she had gone in there, and that's why he's saying, you're overstepping yourself. I can protect you, you know, stay with me, because he feels entitled in some way.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Because he feels entitled to her, and she's gone off to
Yes.
to the Lord Dragon.
Perrin thinks that Torian is sort of like plotting against Rand, standing down the corridor, staring at his chambers, but he's there because he knows Berlain is in there.
Yeah.
Is my thinking. Anyway.
I agree. I hadn't thought of that.
Keep an eye out for his behavior and like comments around that sort of stuff. So after this little thing, Fail just says, I don't care if she smelled like essence of the morning or some such nonsense. But anyway, long story short, Fail basically says, on second thought, I'm not going to go to Rand's chambers. Here, you go talk to him. And she sort of gives him a kiss, and she walks off. Perrin Perrin is confused by her because she, in that conversation, said, not for the first or last time, she just sort of appreciates his innocence, I think, is what she
Yeah.
likes about him most. Like when she's at her most frustrated, she seems to realize that, no, he's actually just being a nice, innocent farm boy, and then she remembers, wait, this is actually what I love about him. And she gives him a kiss and she walks back to her room. So Perrin approaches Rand's rooms, and they've got this massive antechamber outside them because, like Vili was saying before, these used to be the king's quarters in the stone until the time of Arthur Hawkwing, who had united all the nations. And after Hawkwing's fall, no High Lord had ever taken the chance to sort of proclaim himself king or occupy the rooms at all. But wouldn't High Lord Saemon have done exactly that? If we know anything about the Forsaken, Belal would have reveled in being in those rooms. I thought it was weird that he would not have done that. Who knows? He would have had his reasons. Maybe he didn't want to draw unnecessary attention to himself yet. Maybe he was still busy plotting. Who knows?
Yeah, you don't move into the tower and the same day claim the biggest room.
Well, don't you?
Unless you're an
Forsaken
arrogant
and you're
Forsaken.
compelling everyone.
yeah, like would not put up like this is the very reason they're all dead.
I am surprised that he didn't do it.
Yeah, me too.
That's my point here. But anyway, so in this antechamber, it's like 50 paces across, so about 50 meters across, right? This is huge. This is just the room outside Rand's bedroom. And it has 50 defenders standing in a circle in it, looking in all directions, all with their lances at the same angle and everything. All for show, right? Like they're supposed to be looking in all directions because they're protecting the room. But as Perrin sort of walks past them, and I don't think they even spare him a glance. He walks towards the door, and then out from behind the pillars come 6 maidens of the spear. 6
the
of
true
them.
gods.
And Perrin mentions these are the ones that are actually guarding the room. These 6 women, not the 50 men in armor with lances and spears and stuff. It's the 6 women outside the door. And Perrin comes up to them, and I think Dain is the first one that talks to him and says, "Look, Perrin, I can't let you in there." And Perrin, in the same way that he moved Leanne out of his way back in Feldara, he takes Bane by the shoulders or the upper arms, and as he does so, she manages to get a spear up to his neck. And in the same instant, Chihad comes from the other side with a spear on the other side of his neck, and he says it's as if they intend to drive them together so they meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
they sort of, they're sort of impressing on him like, look, you actually can't come in here. And Perrin just says to them, look, ladies, I don't have time for this. And he picks Bane up and he puts her down to one side, and they let go with the spears because they're not going to kill the Lord Dragon's best mate. And but they both sort of have smiles, and they say like, would you ever like to play a game called Maiden's Kiss? I think you do quite well at it.
They like the
Perrin's
beefy
just
boys. Yeah.
They do. And Perrin seems to be quite adept at taking a spear to the neck, so he's a prime candidate. But he just is confused by them basically, and then opens the door, and he walks inside, and immediately he sees the state of the room, right? Like there's broken glass everywhere, the bed is ruined and everything. And Rand looks like he's taken a bath in blood.
I remember that line. Yeah.
He was in his small clothes, right? So he's in his undies basically.
Yep. Shirtless.
And just covered in blood, sitting at the end of his bed on that trunk. He's sitting on the trunk, I think.
I think he's slouched on the floor at this point.
Is it?
No,
Okay,
yeah, sitting against
Later
the
on
bedpost.
On
They
the
don't
floor.
say if it's on the trunk
Right.
or on the floor, but is in the room.
He's in the room.
around that area.
This is important stuff here, people.
So Perrin just shouts out the door. He goes, "Call Moraine. Get her here. Rand needs help." And he hears one of the maidens run off. Perrin tries to sort of comfort Rand and tell him, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay." And Rand just says to him, "Just shut the door." And the maidens that sort of came in with Perrin reluctantly have to obey Rand, so they leave and they do shut the door. So it's just Perrin and Rand now in the room with the door shut. Obviously, there's glass everywhere, including in Rand's body. Like his wounds are like glittering with like traces of glass in them. And Perrin sort of takes he tears off a strip of sheets from the bedding, and he sort of wads it up and he puts it to Rand's side, like to his old wound, because that's all he knows what to do, and beyond that, he doesn't know what else to do. He's just like, okay, I'll do this one, and just holds there. Perrin asks Rand what he was trying to do in that moment. So he's like, what were you trying to do here, Rand? Like, my axe tried to kill me. But Rand just denies doing anything, suspecting instead one of the Forsaken. He says to Perrin, I think it was one of the Forsaken. We, of course, already know what this is.
Indeed.
Perrin sighs a sigh of relief to hear that it wasn't Rand. Obviously he was tense and he didn't even realize it when Rand says he didn't try and do anything. It wasn't him. He sort of relaxes a little bit, which is nice. And the two of them sort of speculate about where Matt could be. And Rand says to Perrin that if something happened to Matt, that Perrin and Loyal at least should get away from him. But Perrin insists that he and Matt will stay with Rand because they're connected to him. And even if Matt was gone or dead, what would Rand do? To which Rand just responds, what they least expect. That's what I have to do in any case, what everyone least expects. So Perrin asks him what that is, but Rand doesn't seem to elaborate. I don't think Rand knows at this stage. He just knows. He just knows that he has to do something that no one can predict, because the Forsaken, if they can predict his moves, obviously can try and manipulate him. And maybe not even just the Forsaken. If Moiraine can predict what he's going to do, she can manipulate him. At that moment, Ruach arrives, and he comes into the room and he mentions that he ran into Berelain and that she told him everything that transpired. And Rand is like, okay, cool. I had to tell her not to tell anyone. And Ruach says, look, I have daughters that are even older than her. I don't think she's going to tell anyone else that. And then Moiraine arrives with Lan and also immediately asks to know what happened. And it's a cool description of, like, despite her stature, she dominates the room. Like, Ruach and Lan are both these huge, walking killing machines, but it's Moiraine that commands the most attention in the room. Ruach and Lan sort of are eyeballing each other, and apparently there's always like sort of sparks in the air when those two are around each other.
There's two alpha wolves meeting, there can't be two.
Yes. No, they can't. So Perrin says, or it says in the book, Perrin was not sure which of the two men was more deadly, but he thought a mouse could starve on the difference.
Yeah.
Which is a cool line. Like, yes, they are both equally deadly. So Lan says to Rand, I thought you were old enough to shave without someone to guide your hand. And Ruach has like a slight smile at that. And then he says, he's young yet. He will learn. And then Lan returns the smile. These are not smiling guys. And Lan, like, we know very well. Ruach we don't know as well. I mean, we do as rereaders, but the first-time reader doesn't know Ruach as well. And Ruach, I think, generally does seem a little bit softer than Lan. Lan is just, cold steel all the time, and for Lan to like actually smile at Ruach is awesome. It's also just made me think of the fact that the Aiel also know who Lan is. They know about the last king of Malkier, and like, because Ruach recognizes his ring when Nynaeve, Elaine, and Egwene are to be sold to those Madral. So Ruach respects Lan, and Lan respects Ruach, and then they share this little joke, which is really cool.
At that point in the chapter, I went, "Oh, Lan found a friend." I was so stoked.
my notes say, Lan returns with a slight smile for Ruach, and the universe implodes. But Moiraine is less impressed by their attempts at humor, and she like shoots them both like a withering look, which I thought was funny in itself as well. Like, Moiraine also doesn't show emotion, but she's like, oh God.
Rolls eyes.
Men. Yeah. So she walks to Rand, and somehow, like, where everyone else has been crunching glass the whole time, she manages not to touch any of the glass. Like, without looking like she's trying, she glides over to Rand without a sound. Also just a cool little Aes Sedai detail. Perrin steps away from Rand, and the cloth that he was holding sticks to the wound. I was like, oh God, that's going to be unpleasant to take off. But Moiraine instructs Rand to try to hold the one power before she's going to do healing, which is the first time I've ever sort of heard this. I mean, obviously I've read the books, but I can't remember anything like this. Apparently she says that could actually help with the healing if he's holding the power, because her healing takes so much out of his body that him holding the one power could actually help quite a bit, which is strange. So Rand tries, but he can't even assume the void, let alone embrace the source. So she just heals him the good old-fashioned way, and the glass sort of tinkles as it falls out of his like healing wounds and stuff, and everything heals up except for his wound that can never quite be healed, as it heals a little bit back down to just that puckered scar that they always talk about. And Moraine sort of muses about the fact that it just doesn't heal properly, and like she's like, I just don't know what to do about this thing, and this is why I keep harping on about the fact that I think that comment that was sent in, I think it was via a listener called Dan, I don't want to get it wrong, but I'm going to chance my arm now. I'll put it in the callbacks if I get it wrong, but saying that Lanfear healed him at the end of the Great Hunt. And as she's sort of musing about the wound, Rand goes, that's the one that'll kill me, isn't it? And he quotes the Careathon cycle about, his blood being on the rocks of Shile Ghul. She also tries to take Callandar from him to set it aside, and he pulls it away from her, like really roughly, like very possessively. So she chides him after he quotes the Careathon cycle. She chides him for reading too much and understanding too little, to which he responds, do you understand more? Because if so, then tell me. And, that doesn't do anything to calm her mood or to settle her down or anything. But Lan sort of pipes up and comes to Rand's defense again. And he says he's just trying to arm himself with knowledge, because no man likes to run at a cliff blindfolded, right? Like he's just trying to learn something. And Moraine seems surprised that Lan is again sticking up for Rand against her sort of, message that she's trying to impress. And even Perrin thinks to himself, wow, Lan never disagrees with Moraine. But we've seen Lan disagree with Moraine. I don't know if it's always in the presence of Perrin, but like it does happen.
When he prepped him for the Amyrlin seat?
That's the big one. He even says Taishar Manether in here.
Exactly.
Yeah, again. Yeah. I think it's like they've also been doing the forms with Lan again. So that,
there was mention.
There's like mention of him
every
doing
day
forms every day with Lan again. Like
he's training all the time.
So Lan is again like almost mentoring him in a way, and
100% mentoring him. I don't think it's even almost. Like I think Rand is absorbing a lot from Lan, and I think Lan is building a bond with Rand that we've seen before. It was out of character for Lan to sort of like coach him and surprise the Amyrlin and Moraine as well with all his like formalities and stuff that he
cat crosses the courtyard.
We've come a far away from that.
It feels like it, eh? So Moraine just says that Rand needs to rest, and that they should send for a new mattress because this bed has been ruined. And Rand says, no, leave the bed. I'm not running from anyone. I'm not running from. I'm not letting them chase me out of my bed either. And that's when Lan is like, Taishar Manether.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't. I'd get the fuck out of here. Prepare me another room.
Because I think it's specifically like the stubborn Manether blood. Like he's half complimenting Rand because it's actually him commenting on how like stubborn he can be. Moraine just seems pissed, and Rand is wearing this sort of like quizzical smile on his face, almost to see what she would do next. So Rand is very much purposefully antagonizing Moraine here, or at least like set himself on a path of not just listening to everything she says. He's going to be a little recalcitrant. Yes, exactly. So he's trying to see what she's going to do next. And, we're all dads here. We know that smile. We know that vibe.
Oh, man,
yeah,
do I.
Let's leave it at that. I was about to tell you a story, but we know that story.
I love that story.
Every day. So everyone else is sort of like eyeballing the door because now it's real tense in there. And Lan and Ruach sort of make a motion as if to leave, and she just points at the space between them and she says, stay right where you are.
It's Perrin and Ruach.
It's Perrin and Ruach.
As Lan makes those comments, and they all think, oh, he never disagrees with her. Perrin immediately makes a move for the door. Like, then he's decided, I'm out of here.
And Ruach turns towards the door, but then he turns back and he just sort of folds his arms. It's like, okay.
Everybody just wants to get out.
So Moraine just says to Rand, explain what happened to see if she can give him any kind of advice. Now, she knows she can't train him in how to use Saidin, but at least she can try and see where things went wrong here. So Rand recounts all the events with no mention of Berylane. And I don't know if that's purposeful or if it's just like she matters so little to him that he didn't even think to include her in this. That's not what happened. She was just like basically another piece of furniture in the room when what happened. So while Rand is telling the story, he also glances at the chest and at Moraine, and then some of the glass sort of like scooches off it, and Rand goes and he sits down on it again. And I
Mm.
think it was Moraine.
Me too.
Because Perrin doesn't know if it was Rand or Moraine, but Rand was saying before he couldn't even, find the void, let alone embrace the source. And I think it was Moraine that clears the chest for him. Small mystery. Listeners, write in. Tell us, who do you think cleared the chest? Was it Moraine or Rand?
Who cares who killed Asmodean? Who cleared that chest? That's the question.
That's the real question.
Yeah, that's what made me think earlier that he was slouched on the floor when Perrin came in, because he wasn't up sitting on the chest yet because it was full of glass.
I think when Moraine heals him, he stands up.
Yeah, that was also a very visceral image in my
But
mind.
he was also like being arched and spasmed and floating in
Yes.
the air, and
his fingers bend back in a way that Perrin think is going to break them.
Yeah.
Like Perrin thinks his fingers are bending backwards so hard, like he's stretching out so hard that he's going to break his own fingers, because the other hand is clutching Calandor.
Mm.
I think Moraine used the weave of how to heal your enemy.
Yeah.
Just the torturous.
Channel the true power. Anyway, so Rand has told the story, and he concludes with, it must have been one of the Forsaken. And that's when Moraine disagrees and explains her theory about the bubbles of evil. I'm not going to elaborate on that. We know what it is. The Dark One's influence is affecting the real world now in a physical way. But what is noteworthy is that it seems that these bubbles of evil would, in theory, seek out Ta'veren. Or if, a Ta'veren is pulling the threads of the pattern around themselves, these bubbles moving along the pattern would naturally find their way to the Ta'veren, which is exactly what we saw here. Rand, Matt, and Perrin each had a bubble of evil attack them.
So a heat-seeking fart bubble.
Exactly.
That's it.
My note here for the guys is, strap in, boys. You are all three powerful Ta'veren, and the bubbles are coming. So Rand inquires about Matt, and Ruach mentions that he saw him, healthy and hale, heading towards the servants' quarters. And then Moraine sort of gives him a look, and he goes, not towards the docks or the stables.
Yes.
knowing Matt well enough that he needs to add that. And at that moment, Bain and Chiad enter with a bowl and a pitcher for Rand to clean himself up. Moraine reminds Rand that he needs to choose a course of action, but he remains stubborn about doing anything. He's not going to be pushed or prodded by Moraine, and he tells her as much. He tells her that he will accept her help, but he remains adamant that he'll make his own decisions. And I just thought how far we've come from Eamon's Field when Rand was imploring Moraine to heal his father, and what reverence and fear he had for the Aes Sedai. And here he is openly crossing her and resisting her and saying, no, I'll accept your help, but I will make my own decisions. Don't pretend to tell me what to do. And that was a mere, three books and 2 chapters away.
Indeed.
In this sort of exchange, Rand looks at Perrin as if to try to communicate something, but when Perrin can't figure it out, Rand just sort of sighs and asks everyone to leave, saying, we'll talk tomorrow. I don't know what Rand was trying to communicate to Perrin.
I also saw that, and I thought maybe he's trying to get him to to stay. Everyone else go, I need to talk to you alone. Or you understand something that none of these people do, but Perrin doesn't. This is a theme with him, huh?
Use your words. Perrin does stick around. I mean, Bain and Chiad are still there when Rand says to Perrin before he goes that we do what we have to. We all do what we have to. And then Perrin actually smells fear from Rand and then leaves. So Rand, I mean, in the larger scheme of things, knows what he has to do, which is battle the Dark One at Tarmon Gai'don. But I don't know if Rand is actually thinking about something he has to do in the immediate future, because he doesn't seem to know what it is that he's going to do. Bain and Chiad sort of stay behind, and they're fussing over Rand, and they said they'll leave if he can stand up and wash himself. That's how Perrin leaves them, because this is still from Perrin's point of view. And as he's leaving with Ruach, he comments to Ruach saying how the Aiel behave differently towards Rand than how everyone else does. There's no bowing, there's no scraping for the Dragon Reborn. Ruach explains that the Dragon prophecy is a Wetlander prophecy. It's yet to be determined whether Rand is actually he who comes with the dawn. And when Perrin asks him, so what happens if Rand is not he who comes with the dawn? And Ruach just sort of placates him and says, don't worry about that, and sort of, dismisses the question out of hand. And that sort of gets Perrin a little bit worried. And it's in that moment that he resolves to make Fail leave without him. He's like, there's too much danger here. Even the Aiel can't fully be trusted at this stage. I'm going to tell Fail to go, but I'm going to stay and perform my duty. And that's the end of chapter 3.
Yeah, not 3,000, just 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? I mean, we sort of touched on a couple things as we went through this. So I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to call out.
No, it's just Fail wanting to go, and then him saying, "Oh, I've got to stay, but if you need to go, go. But I want you to stay." Turning to, "No, I think you should. I need to get out of here."
Yeah.
Like realizing
I need
what
to keep
level
her
of
safe.
danger there is around the situation, because now he's also worrying about the lords. Like, cool, if he'll decide to just pull out of the stone, how long are these people going to be civil before they try and overthrow the dragon?
Also, a new challenger enters the ring. Bubbles of evil.
Yeah.
And they're drawn to me and Rand. Fael needs to go.
I mean, Moraine even says that. How, like, Rand, you need to go. How long before one of these lords poisons your food, sends an assassin? We need to change it up. You need to go over the spine of the world. Go mess around in the desert. Go on.
All right, so then let's roll on to chapter 4, which is called Strings. And that's all you, Joe.
Yeah, I'll take it. In my Kindle, chapter 1 was an hour and 20 minutes or something. You had to put the timer on. This was 13. 8.5 pages of notes versus 1.5 pages. So we'll be done. Strings. We're with Tom. This is where Matt was going when Ruach saw him, heading for the servants' quarters. So Tom decided he's going to go and get a room there. He won't be staying there, to kind of deflect attention from himself that he arrived with Aes Sedai. He doesn't want that legacy clinging to him. There was also, and because we're in his room now, and there's what Moritz said earlier there about Matt thinking about him and having all these girls. There's literally like women's scarves and underwear scattered around Tom's room. There's hanging on like a windowsill or something. It's like, Jesus, Tom.
He doesn't even remember the woman who the scarf belongs to.
Exactly.
He's like, whose scarf is that again?
And he even thinks to himself, it's like, it's nice to have a few kisses and tickles and la la la, but don't let it get complicated. The kisses and tickles, yeah. So anyway, Tom is forging letters at this point, sitting with candles all around him, forging a letter from Lady Eltirna, who is the wife of Tidosian. So he is forging a letter that in her hand would be wary, your husband suspects, or in his hand at least. So he's trying to make it look like she's having an affair and that the High Lord suspects, and now he thinks to himself, like, how can he get this into their rooms or their chambers or whatever to make it look like she had carelessly left that letter and then her husband finds it. What is he up to?
What is going on?
I know, but he's not even Kyrian.
Thomas
he's
Rowe
can't help himself.
I know, but I know that's what he's doing, but what is the purpose of it? Who are these two people, and why is he making it look like they have an affair? Are they having it? Is she having an affair? I don't know. Questions.
Thomas decided that he was going to bow out of the game. He was going to just live happily with, what was her name?
Dina.
And after he then got so angry that he murdered a king, he decided, well, if you're going to be a king slayer, you got to just as well climb into it and do it. So he's back in the game.
Back. Is there, I forget exactly what he said, but Tom sort of recounts an interaction that he had with Rand.
More detail?
In this chapter. It's something like he has an interaction with Rand in which he sort of downplays his connection to Rand. Like he's trying to make it clear to Rand that he shouldn't let people know that he knows him, because I think Tom is trying to play the game of houses on Rand's behalf. I think he is making moves here to help Rand.
Yes, because that is a big theme for Tom in helping Matt specifically, and I suppose by extension
comes up here.
Rand. Yes, it does. Exactly that.
And he can't help them against Aes Sedai, but he can help them in the plots that go around and people striving for power, because that he knows.
Yeah.
So what does he do? He just sows the seed of division in between all of them now.
Yeah, to keep them distracted and keep their
Mm.
attention off Rand with marital affairs and whatnot. There's also a
Yeah.
mention, like when he's thinking about his previous life, he said he always used to get the girls loving him and stuff because they would be so surprised that an old man like him could jump around and doing backflips and everything. But ever since his limp, that has ended.
Yeah.
So he's not the man he was. So maybe that's why he's also dipping back into Dies de Mar. Like he that life of his
Well,
traveling
you wouldn't
around.
say that by that the state of his bedroom with
No.
underwear and scarves and.
But maybe that's that's how he feels inside. Like that part of his life is over. Like he'll never be the man he once was in that respect.
Yeah.
So now he's going back to the old tricks that he's learned, being part of courts, royal courts.
So this is what he says. He's talking about Matt always making a joke about his room.
Yes.
Then he goes, if he realized that the room also assured that no one could think of Tom having any connection to the Dragon Reborn, Matt, being Matt, probably thought that a reasonable wish. It had taken Tom all of 2 sentences, delivered in haste during a rare moment when no one was looking, to make Rand see the real point. Everyone listened to a Gleeman, everyone watched him, but no one really saw him or remembered who he talked to, as long as he was only a Gleeman. So he had quickly told Rand in quick 2 sentences, I don't want to be near you because I don't want people to draw a connection between us. And I think he's sort of keeping in the shadows and, pulling some puppet strings in the background to aid Rand.
Definitely now. Convinced. Well done. Just then, there's a knock at the door. And Tom scrambles to hide all of this hectic evidence. His forgery
Very
kit.
incriminating.
Puts it on like another one of those trunks that everybody has and kicks it under a table somewhere and opens the door, and there's Matt. So Matt has arrived. Matt doesn't make any jokes about the room. Matt is super serious. Happens when your playing cards come alive and try to murder you. There's no time for jokes, really, after that. He tells, Tom notices this, and then Matt tells him the whole story about the cards and everything. And I think it's great that Matt went straight for Tom. Like, he didn't go to Rand, he didn't go to Perrin, he didn't go to Moraine, nobody. He went straight for Tom, because him and Tom, that's his connection. That's his mentor.
And it's reciprocated.
Yes.
Tom says in this chapter, he likes Matt. He even owes him.
Yeah. He owes him,
Like the
though,
boy.
because, that whole thing also comes up. This is what I talk about here, is that he failed to help his nephew 15 years ago. So he's passed on, he's like put that onto Matt now. Now he's going to help Matt, because now Matt is involved with these Aes Sedai, and he couldn't do something last time, and he's going to do it now. And he's also helping Rand, now that you mentioned it, about with those letters. So he's doing everything he can to untangle these boys from Aes Sedai strings.
Yeah. Because Rand can also channel, like his nephew.
Yeah.
So there's a very direct correlation there. And Matt also pulled Tom out of his drunken stupor. Right?
Yes.
Like Tom was in Tarvalon just drinking his life away. So that's what I think he owes Matt for.
All right. That as well. I also think there's that projection of because he says for 15 years.
100%.
Is
100%.
totally, that wasn't 15 years ago. But yeah, he owes these kids, and he feels he owes them, and like his previous life, as I mentioned, is over. The backflips are done. He's got to find a new mission now. Matt is telling him, like, look, I gotta go. We gotta get the fuck out of here. I can't do this anymore. Cards are trying to kill me. I need to get away from Rand, but I never find the moment. And Tom wants to tell him, well, it's because you're Taviran, but he says, if you say the word Taviran, I'm getting the fuck out of here right now. So he's like, it's because Rand's your friend and you don't want to abandon him. You want to help him. You're a good guy. You can see that Matt's a good guy below all the tickling and kissing and gambling things. So he just wants to get out of there. His plan sounds amazing. Like, I'm jealous of his plan. His plan is like, just Tom, me and you, let's go traveling from village to village. They don't know us. They don't know who the Dragon Reborn is. They think Madral and Trollocs are stories to scare children, and we'll go telling stories and playing the flute and gambling and winning gold, tickling the serving girls. Like, that'd just be the two of them on the road, 2 bachelors. Sounds great, but not going to happen, guys. Not going to happen. But he also says, like, yeah, there's always something, like, I feel like something's stopping me, because, like, I can feel that I'm going to miss something momentous if I leave, and that's that Taviran-ness, but Tom's not allowed to say the word Taviran in Matt's presence. But he equates it to like knowing that on Sunday there's going to be fireworks and you can't leave. Although there was a nice little, it's Friday, you got to stick around because the fireworks are coming. He's also paranoid. He's convinced that Moraine is watching him, or at least having him watched, because it always comes back to him that because he's in there with the servants and the lords and everything, and it's like, yeah, Moraine was asking about you the other day. So he constantly feels like he's under someone's eye, he's underfoot, he's getting manipulated, and he doesn't like it. He just wants to get out of there, but he can't abandon Rand. So Tom is there. He's going to help him along, and Matt wants to leave right away. He just wants to leave that night in the middle of the night, and Tom convinces him to stay. He says, look, it can wait until morning. How about we play a game of stones? And as soon as he says that, Matt changes completely, because Matt is not just stoked to be gambling and playing games, but I think that the decision is being taken away from him. It's a relief that at that point where he can go like, because he does want to stay. He knows he has to stay. And this decision has been taken away. All right, I can have a couple of hours of respite where I don't have to worry about it, and I can sit down and play some stones. And then there's a scene as well where Tom puts the stones in his hands to choose black or white, and Matt chooses, with his luck, I suppose, the black one, so he gets to start. And he's so stoked. And I'm like, you're going to lose. It doesn't matter if you start or not. Tom's going to win. So anyway, they begin their game, and there's a moment as well where he sits down and he asks Tom if he can move this chest, and Tom's like, yeah, sure, playing it down, but it's full of the ink and all the letters and all the incriminating evidence, and Matt just kicks it under the table viciously, and Matt's thinking, Tom's thinking, oh crap, I hope I close the ink bottles, all my forgeries are going to be ruined. But anyway, they get to playing stones, and like Tom can see how important Matt is to not only to the pattern but to the world and to Rand, and he's doing his best now. I thought this was a very cool chapter. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was the last cool chapter I had like this where nothing really happened was Perrin working the forge in the previous book. I had another kind of similar feeling while reading this. It was great just to see him and Tom having a chat, and Matt getting everything off his chest, and Tom like helping him out, and
it's this nice little interstitial moment.
It's a little interlude between the madness of everything coming around him. And I thought as well, I made a little list here. Like Matt has Tom, Perrin has Fail, Rand has Moraine and Lan, even though he doesn't want them, but he has them. Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine have each other. They don't have any, because there's the three of them. They've got each other's backs. And now Min has the Amyrlin. So out of our little core youngsters traveling around, they've all like paired off in their little groups, and they've got their mentors and their support structures around them. And Min's got the Amyrlin and the Black Ajah, and she's in the middle of the tower. Like, oh, shit, you need to get out of there.
Shit.
And she does eventually. And that's how the chapter ends, with the two of them playing some stones. And that's it. Thank goodness.
Lovely.
Lovely, jubbly.
I was trying to see if Tom has any kind of specific comments about Moraine, and he does sort of he expects that she is capable of shielding Rand from Dai Mar, not only because she is an Aes Sedai, but because she's Kyrenian.
Yes, there was that mention as well.
And I wonder if there isn't just like an added level of respect or reverence because of his feelings for her.
Yeah, I was wondering when this chapter opened and it was him writing letters, I thought, oh, is he writing that letter to Moraine? Maybe it was, because there was paper all over. He hadn't just written one letter. So
no,
maybe it comes later. I don't know.
Maybe.
But that was my first thought.
Yeah. How about you, Vil?
Now, in terms of the chapter, it was like a blow-off steam chapter after the massive slog, but not a slog, but it was a lot of reading before that.
It was taxing, and then a nice little soft landing at the end.
But no, not much to add on. I mean, Jody had that one very well covered. It's nice that they're playing a bit of stones for some money in the end there.
Oh, and Matt declines wine because Tom says, no, look, I've got some wine here. He's like, no.
No, I've already had cards come alive tonight.
I need to keep straight.
Yeah, I need a clear head for what's coming.
We've got a bigger question about all of this that ties back to the last episode. Where was Rand in the sort of debrief episode? Like, everyone was in the big hall having a chat with Moraine and sort of knowing but where was Rand? Rand has been missing, and now 2 weeks later he's back, but we don't know where he was.
He seems to be brooding a lot. Like, he spends a lot of time by himself.
Okay.
Hmm.
Now, did you guys remember to choose a favorite moment?
I did this time.
You do most times.
I'm getting like now these later episodes, definitely.
Okay, so why don't you stew on that for a little while longer and we'll let Billy go first.
My
The
favorite
old bait and
moment
switch.
is the Inception mode Matt when he's falling through slow motion in the air
Hmm.
and coins are still going up into the air and Matrix Cardman comes out at him and he throws blades like bullets. It's just the best.
So was he moving at normal speed and everything else was moving in
No,
slow motion?
he was moving. He was thinking in fast motion, but going in slow motion. And he
Okay.
just took that moment. It's like he was falling through honey. It's like, well, at least I can send off some blades. And he sent off those flying blades.
Because what happened at the start of the Great Hunt is Rand is busy practicing with Lan on that tower, and he is also caught in the air. But
That's
Rand
right.
can't move fast, and he takes that blow from Lan.
Was that also, we still speculated that it was a bubble of evil that might
That's
have
what most people think. There's no other explanation that fits it at all.
a methane bubble of
That first fart
Death.
bubble that rose up.
Just the first hint. There's a different flavor. Rand couldn't move in that one.
Yeah, but that was great for me. I loved it. I loved
It is
it.
cool.
I liked
Yeah.
the time shenanigans of all of a sudden everything just going slow mo. That was great.
Also, new skill for Matt, knife throwing.
Blades.
Already a master at it.
Well, he picked up juggling quickly, so he's deft with the hand and the sleight of hand movements.
It's just
Oh, yeah.
the flute he should be avoiding. No one needs
Yes.
to hear that.
Rand gets the flute.
I was thinking about that slow motion. I wondered if it was just his perception because he's that good. You know, like we had to slow it down, or was the bubble literally slowing down time?
No,
for
the
him?
bubble was slowing it literally down for everyone.
There's a description of the feeling of the air around him,
Okay.
like
And
he was
then
in
as
honey or jelly or something.
yeah, and as soon as he flicked the knives out and it was done, it was back to normal time. Like then he fell off the chair. So all of this was him leaning backwards on the chair, going, "Oh well, at least I got enough knives in my coats and boots, and I had some to spare to stand ready."
I love the microphone work there, Vil. You really painted an audio picture by leaning away from the microphone.
It's a 3D listening experience.
Indeed.
How about you, Joe? What is your favorite moment?
Ruark and Lan sharing that little smile between each other.
You son of a bitch.
You shouldn't have let me go. That was definitely the one that stood out for me. Because like I said earlier, like, oh, he made a friend. Like Lan has no one that is on his level. Moraine has other Aes Sedai. Rand and them, they're young. He's like a dad figure. He's got no one that's a badass, leader like he is. Like he's no one in the world except maybe Ruark comes pretty close. He's even the same age. So it's like he has a contemporary now after 4 books. And I thought, sweet, finally.
Yeah. And I mean, you also just really like Ruark, right? So it's cool to see those two have something along those lines. It's actually kind of akin to Lan reading that poetry to who's the Lord of Fel,
Anglemar.
Anglemar. Yeah, it's just like it shows you this lighter side where Lan can sort of be in someone else's presence and they understand each other without talking.
Yeah. Sorry, Moritz.
So yes.
You had a backup though, didn't you?
No. That was it.
No. You always have an honorable mention. I
have an honorable mention, but it's not from me. Rowan wrote in and said his favorite moment was Rand fighting the 3 versions of himself. I will elaborate on that and say that the idea of Rand fighting a mirror image of himself and putting away his sword, and the mirror images doing that as well, reminds me of the original Prince of Persia. Did you ever play that game?
Yes.
There's a level in which, like later in the game, you jump through a mirror and your reflection comes out the other side and you run in opposite directions. And then later in the game, close to the end, you face that mirror image and you do a sword fight, but you can't beat it. the only way to beat it is to put the sword away and actually walk into it, and you recombine.
Ah,
So every time you try and fight it, it'll kill you. But eventually, if you just put the sword away and you walk into it, and that's virtually exactly what happened here, like also absorbed.
wow.
Damn.
Yeah.
I don't
I
remember
wonder which
that.
came first.
Oh.
I wonder as well. Like that would be interesting.
I will address this in next week's episode.
Callbacks.
I always say next week and last week as if we do this weekly. People just assume that I'm talking about next episode or last episode.
People, we know what you're saying. Everyone knows.
What we can also do in the next episode is read our listeners' submissions for their favorite moments and
All right.
theories and corrections and rants, anything they want to get off their chest. If they want to tell us to stop saying the same thing over and over again, please feel free to do that, and I'll work on it, because I know I can get a bit repetitive. But the point being, get in touch with us, and you can do so via tweeting us at Blood and Ash Pod, or following any of the social media links in the episode description. And then we can have a good old time as the what is the saying, like we can have the water cooler discussions, but over massive distances and protracted periods of time. In our next water cooler discussion, we will be covering chapters 5 through, drumroll, 10.
Ah,
So we will do 6 chapters again. Back to
Yay.
the old format. But that's only because the next 100 or so odd pages do actually cover 6 chapters. Much more, quote unquote, normal size chapters, and not
Yeah.
these gargantuan beasts like we had in the first 2. I think the first 2 chapters are 40 and 38 pages respectively, something like that, 39 and 38 or something. So yeah, that chapter 5 is called Questioners, and chapter 10 is called The Stone Stands.
Questions.
So,
I'm already getting quite like sour about hearing it.
skeptical, yes. So on that sour note, let's say a sour goodbye to all of our listeners, and we will join you guys next time.
Haifa Yota.
Namaria.
Hey, easy.